Chapter 598. Feeling the tremors from the ground, Wyrm could not help but look in a certain direction. Wyrm could sense that something was running over from the direction he was looking at. Did your companions come to save you? However, the two of them did not answer Wyrm's question. Not bad. You chose not to speak, because someone is here to save you? Wyrm smiled. Then, have you ever thought that I might directly kill your companions who came to save you? Wyrm's words did not shake the two of them as if the person who came was not their partner. In other words, the two of them thought that Wyrm could not kill the person who came. At that moment, the creatures that caused the tremors appeared. More than 10 white dragon lizards that looked like lizards, but were a few times larger than an ordinary person charged at Wyrm. Wyrm could sense that these large lizards were very powerful. They were at least in the 5 digits. However, even so, Wyrm was not afraid. Then Wyrm began chanting a new spirit language. All evildoers, be afraid of my power. Now I'll have the majesty of 10 mountains, the power of 100 rivers, and the strength of 1,000 giant dragons. The majestic me will raise the ferocious mark of a dragon. Wyrm finished chanting the spirit language at a speed that seemed slow, but was actually very fast. In an instant, the golden giant shadow behind Wyrm began to change. Initially, the giant shadow behind Wyrm was just an ordinary golden giant. However, after Wyrm finished chanting the spirit language, the golden giant began to grow into the characteristics of a dragon. Dragon horns, dragon claws, dragon whiskers, dragon tail, and everything that was related to a dragon grew on the golden giant shadow. In an instant, the golden giant shadow turned into a golden dragonoid shadow. The pressure that the dragonoid shadow exuded shocked Griya and the girl. At that moment, it was as if a pure-blood dragon had appeared in front of them. This is the combination of Wyrm's giant avatar and my dragon-type avatar. A dragonoid with the ability to kill dragons combined with a tall and strong giant would result in a dragonoid. In the next moment, under Wyrm's control, the golden dragon man raised its fist high and smashed it down viciously at the oncoming white dragon lizards. Boom! The white dragon lizard was easily annihilated. A violent shockwave reverberated throughout World's End. This time, however, the attack from the giant silhouette, which had condensed its power, did not cause a tempest. However, it did cause a lot of dust. Abruptly sweeping away the dust around him, Wyrm looked at Griya and the girl who were originally beside him, but had now disappeared and frowned slightly. Wyrm had just sensed that someone had teleported Griya and the girl away while he was controlling the golden dragonoid to attack the white dragon lizards. Shortly after, Wyrm turned to the side and saw a gentlemanly man with elegant light brown hair standing behind him. It seems like you're rather powerful to be able to seize the opportunity to rescue them from under my nose. Wyrm gazed at the man. I can't help it. Even though I'm not completely on their side, I'm still considered their companion. After all, I have to rescue them if I can. The man smiled at Wyrm gracefully. But in Wyrm's opinion, he was rather arrogant. Be afraid of those with wings. Evil people and powerful people are afraid of me with wings. My wings will bring you curses. Evil people can't hit me. Wyrm glared with his golden vertical pupils and finished his thought. In an instant, the powers of the 3 avatars, giant, dragon, and phoenix, burst forth at the same time. Wyrm vanished in an instant, bringing along the golden dragonoid shadow. Then a huge golden fist with 10,000 tons of power instantly smashed the man into the ground. This time, Wyrm didn't hold back like he did with the girl and Griya. The punch he threw at the man was a full-force blow. The dragonoid shadow slowly raised its fist, and specks of blue particles disappeared with the wind. Wyrm was certain that the blue particles belonged to the man just now. Now he had been reduced to ashes. However, Wyrm could be said to have failed this time. Oh my, you're really powerful. The man's voice came from behind Wyrm. Wyrm's eyes showed some confusion. Then Wyrm turned around unhurriedly. He had to admit that this was really bold. Wyrm was not afraid of the enemy sneaking up on him. Hence, Wyrm turned around slowly. The enemy was also in a hurry to attack, and chose to wait for Wyrm to turn around slowly. Wyrm turned around. In the end, the man who should have been smashed to pieces really reappeared here. Moreover, he was behind Wyrm. Now Wu Ming understood why Gria and the girl weren't worried about the newcomer at all. It seemed like this thing couldn't be killed. Can't be killed. Wu Ming began to guess the other party's ability. Thank you for taking care of that attack just now. My name is Maxwell. The man, or rather Maxwell, bowed to Wu Ming and did not attack. You're not attacking? Wu Ming asked casually. Maxwell shook his head. I know my own abilities. Even if you're only a soul now, you're not someone in existence like me can offend. Maxwell shook his head elegantly. However, through this sentence, Wu Ming learned a lot of things. My mission has been completed. Then, I'll take my leave first. See you next time, powerful dragon species. In an instant, Maxwell's figure disappeared. However, the moment he disappeared, Wu Ming noticed a slight change in the space. It doesn't seem like a space shift. Wu Ming pondered. He had to admit that the box court was really an interesting place. The teleportation that he encountered was basically not a simple space shift. Moreover, through the various actions and words of this wave of people just now, Wu Ming could tell. The other party seemed to know about his own main body. Wu Ming guessed that either the other party was related to the demon lord who had attacked No Name, or the other party was the demon lord who had attacked No Name. However, there was still too little information. Wu Ming's inference was only an analysis of his own main body. If only there was more information. TSK, I should have directly captured the griffin and the girl before. However, this time when he came out to meet with the other party, he did not have the mentality of being able to obtain any information. In the end, he got some information about his main body. He shook his head and stopped thinking about these messy things. Canceling the transformation state, Wu Ming waved one hand, and a dark space door appeared in front of Wu Ming. 16 knights should have won. It seems that I have to prepare a little. With that, Wu Ming entered the portal and disappeared, leaving behind a mess. Chapter 599. On a sunny afternoon, the lower level of the eastern district of Boxding presented a warm and peaceful scene. In the Thousand Eyes branch, White Yiksha closed his eyes and slowly tasted the tea leaves in his teacup, enjoying the peace that was hard to come by. Suddenly, a purplish-black dimensional portal appeared before White Yiksha like a black hole. White Yiksha opened his eyes slightly and looked at the ripple that was like a black hole with interest. Then, when he sensed that someone was coming out, White Yiksha held his teacup with one hand and waved his free hand at the dimensional portal. A seemingly ordinary but powerful energy bomb was launched at the black hole. As a result, Wu Ming, who had just come out of the dimensional portal, was hit in the face by the energy bomb. Master White Yiksha, do I have a grudge against you? Wu Ming grabbed the energy bomb that was about to explode, but could not as it was suppressed by Wu Ming. He looked at White Yiksha helplessly. Oh, isn't this Vilo? I didn't expect this to be your trick. Bai Yiksha took his time, and calmly took a sip of tea. Later on, White Yiksha looked at Wu Ming. It seems like you're not in a good mood. Wu Ming sighed when he heard what White Yiksha said. He had just stepped out of the dimensional portal, and was hit in the face by an energy bomb. No matter who it was, they would not be in a good mood. If you're in a good mood, it's just that I've encountered something. Later on, Wu Ming thought of something and sat down next to White Yiksha. Speaking of which, Letitia's gift competition should be over. What's the result? As he asked White Yiksha, golden ripples appeared in the air around Wu Ming. A luxurious crystal bottle flew out from Wu Ming's relic space. Later on, Wu Ming snapped his fingers and created a crystal cup with his create green item skill. Through his telekinesis, he controlled the crystal bottle, and the crystal bottle in the air poured wine into the cup in Wu Ming's hand. Just like that, Wu Ming began to drink by himself. Looking at the crystal bottle floating beside Wu Ming, and smelling the fragrance of the wine in Wu Ming's hand, White Yiksha put down the teacup in his hand. Isn't the result obvious? No name one. At the same time, 16th Knights and Wyrm gained some prestige. White Yiksha was there to watch No Name. S match. 16 Knights had won beautifully, and No Name was in the limelight. Is that so? 16 Knights is quite fast. Wu Ming downed the wine in his cup in one gulp. Noticing that White Yiksha's attention was on his wine, Wu Ming smiled in relief. Do you want some? This is a good wine that I plundered from Perseus. Wuming said as he shook the bottle in his hand. Needless to say, Luo's really knew how to enjoy himself. He spent a lot of his community's voluntary exchange, and could afford to be luxurious for once. This bottle of wine that was over 10,000 years old was one of Luo's luxurious items. You really know how to do this kind of business. As a witness to the gift competition between Luo's and Wuming, White Yiksha naturally knew that Perseus became Wuming's possession. Then Wuming casually taking things from Perseus was naturally legal. But I like it. White Yiksha showed a well-done smile. Wuming snapped his fingers and another similar crystal cup appeared in the air. The crystal bottle automatically tilted, and the wine in the bottle poured into the crystal cup. After it was full, the crystal cup floated in front of White Yiksha. White Yiksha took the wine and downed it in one gulp and made a sound of satisfaction. Ha, it's really good wine. Another cup. The crystal bottle automatically poured wine for White Yiksha and Wuming. Like old drinking buddies, the two of them drank together. Then, why did you come to me since you already guessed the result? White Yiksha's face was slightly red as he narrowed his eyes, giving off the feeling of being drunk. Wuming downed the wine in his cup in one gulp and looked at White Yiksha without hesitation. Actually, I'm here to ask you about the godhood, Garen said. Oh, godhood. White Yiksha's eyes lit up. After all, I'm not from this world. I don't know much about godhood, so I wanted to ask you who can bestow godhood to others. After all, there was no such thing as godhood in Wuming's power system. Among the people he knew, White Yiksha was the only one who had a good relationship with him, and could bestow godhood to others. If I'm not wrong, you want to know about godhood because of Letitia, right? White Yiksha was not in a hurry to answer Wuming's question. He took his time to sip his wine. That's right. Wuming nodded. He was not surprised that White Yiksha had guessed his thoughts. Wuming had no intention of hiding it, and White Yiksha was a smart person. Hence, it was normal for him to be able to guess it. Letitia's strength had become so weak because she had handed over her godhood. She had once said that her strength was not even 1/10 of her original strength. Hence, Wuming wanted to ask if there was any alternative method. I have to say, kid, you've asked the right person. White Yiksha immediately took out his folding fan and proudly covered the lower half of his face. You should know that I'm in the top 10 of the boxers. I've also had a lot of experience in bestowing godhood. This surprised Wuming. Although Wuming could see that White Yiksha was extraordinary, Wuming did not expect White Yiksha to be in the top 10. However, why did he suddenly feel that the boxer's combat strength was very low? As if he could see Wuming's speechless ridicule. White Yiksha knocked on Wuming with his folding fan. Kid, don't be so careless. You should know that your strength is very strong. Even I'm not confident that I can defeat you. Hearing White Yiksha's words, Wuming felt relieved. The origin dragon's strength increased with age. If Wuming had stayed in the origin and never left, even if he did not have the Savior Divine Blade, the 12 incarnations, and did not have magic or loon, Wuming could look down on all things with just his origin dragon's physical body. In other words, when the origin dragon was fully grown, it would be a huge dragon with high HP, high defense and strong attack. No one could break its defense, invincible physical body. No one could indirectly curse, seal, etc. harm it. No one could escape its pursuit, free travel between worlds. And no one could block its attacks. Powerhouses did not have any fancy abilities. It was just a casual attack. As a young origin dragon, Wuming had mastered many techniques. Through the enhancement of his race's strength, even in this boxer's world with many powerhouses, he could dominate an area. Moreover, it was the kind that no one could control. However, then I'm sorry. Actually, I don't know my own limits. Chapter 600. Wuming shrugged his shoulders jokingly, which made White Yiksha very unhappy. White Yiksha wanted to tell Wuming that he was very strong, but Wuming was like an ordinary person who had won $5 million and saved it in the bank, continuing to live an ordinary life. However, White Yiksha thought about it and did not fly into a rage. Well, as the star spirit of the sun, I'm the same as you. White Yiksha was the materialization of the heaven-shaking spiritual lattice. He was originally a demon king born as an unaffiliated human in the final trial. Due to the development of technology, the heaven-shaking spiritual lattice was outlawed, and the danger of White Yiksha as a human in the final trial was indirectly eliminated. However, the powerful White Yiksha was still very powerful. It did not mean that White Yiksha was crippled without the heaven-shaking spiritual lattice. That was because White Yiksha was the star spirit of the sun. As a sun that existed longer than humans, White Yiksha could not be weak no matter how one thought about it. In addition, White Yiksha was not a cruel person at heart. Therefore, White Yiksha accepted the Yiksha godhood of Buddhism, lowered his spiritual lattice, and came to the lower class of the box court world to be the ruler of the class. However, if one were to look at the whole story, White Yiksha and Wuming were really the same kind of people. They were experts who appeared out of thin air. They were not strong in the early stages but were basically invincible in the later stages. Not to mention, you have the power of the sun in your body. It's completely possible for someone to say that we are relatives. White Yiksha was referring to Wuming's sun incarnation. Then my relative, Lord White Yiksha, do you have any thoughts about Letitia losing her godhood? Wuming directly hit the nail on the head, and began to claim kinship with White Yiksha in a joking manner. Regarding Letitia, I don't have a choice. White Yiksha shook his head. Although godhood seemed to be mass-produced, there are many drawbacks. White Yiksha began to explain to Wuming. Letitia's godhood is exclusive to her. It was bestowed by the expert who created the vampires. The expert who created the vampires? Wuming asked in confusion. White Yiksha was deeply gratified by Wuming's ignorance. I'm afraid you don't know that Letitia's race was created by the dragon who carried the world. Carrying the world dragon. The name sounded grand, almost comparable to his own, origin dragon. I'm not too sure about the specifics. All you need to know is that it's a dragon with a world on its back. White Yiksha told Wuming simply. Letitia's vampire clan was created by that guy, and Letitia's divinity was also given by him. Then White Yiksha explained the godhead to Wuming in detail. Different gods and Buddhas bestowed different godhoods. For example, the godhoods bestowed by 2-digit godhoods were much stronger than those bestowed by 5-digit godhoods. What if White Yiksha bestowed Letitia with a new godhood? Wuming asked. After all, Wuming wanted Letitia to recover her previous strength. Since that was the case, wouldn't it be better to have the White Yikshas bestow divinity to Letitia? You're dreaming, kid. White Yiksha attacked Wuming mercilessly. Let's not talk about the fact that my strength has been suppressed. It won't be that easy to bestow a divinity to Letitia. Besides, if I bestow a divinity to Letitia, then she will belong to Thousand. Yes. That's really fine. After all, to be able to recover Letitia's previous strength, she would need someone like White Yiksha. If White Yiksha bestowed a godhood, she would become a dependent. Just like the big snake at the end of the world, it was White Yiksha's dependent. I'm just asking. I've never thought of asking you to bestow Letitia with a godhood. After all, Wuming also had the ability to bestow power to others. Speaking of which, don't you have the ability to bestow power to others? White Yiksha asked, puzzled. Logically speaking, someone at Wuming's level should also have the means to bestow power to others. Cough. Yes, there is. It's just that the process wasn't very friendly. Wuming smiled awkwardly. Wuming's magician incarnation, formerly one of Wellislana's 10 incarnations, the youth incarnation, could bestow power to others. However, it could only bestow power to humans. Letitia, a vampire, probably could not. Wuming's current magician incarnation also had the ability to bestow protection to others. White Princess Alice had been bestowed protection by Wuming more than once. However, only mouth-to-mouth was the most effective and fastest way. However, the power instilled in this way would eventually be exhausted. In other words, if the power was exhausted, he would have to go through the embarrassing process again. Although Letitia had once wanted to give herself to Wuming because of a misunderstanding, it was still a misunderstanding. This method was not very friendly to the current Letitia. However, other than that, Wuming had another method. One of the 12 incarnations, the dependent incarnation. Wuming had wanted to use this method from the very beginning, but it was slightly unfair to Letitia. After all, if she accepted Wu Ming's contract and became his dependent, she would truly become one of Wu Ming's people, just like the Skywing species. What Wu Ming hoped for was for Letitia to become the guardian of No Name, not his own dependent. That was why Wu Ming had asked White Yiksha about the godhood. Forget it. I'll go back and discuss it with Letitia. Wu Ming rubbed his brow as he felt a headache coming on. Oh, you have an idea. White Yiksha held the wine glass and took another sip. You can say that. As Wu Ming said that, he used his telekinesis to control the crystal wine bottle, and poured himself another glass of wine before downing it in one gulp. Thank you for telling me so much, White Yiksha. Then I'll take my leave. With that said, Wu Ming did not stand on ceremony. He crushed the wine glass he had created using the Create Green item, and let it dissipate into magic particles in the air. After that, Wu Ming stood up and opened the portal to No Name. The moment before he entered, Wu Ming turned to look at White Yiksha. White Yiksha, there's still quite a bit of wine left in that bottle. I'll give it to you. Oh. Then I won't stand on ceremony. White Yiksha did not hesitate to grab the crystal bottle in the air. Thank you again for your help, White Yiksha. With that said, Wu Ming entered the portal and left the branch of No Name. There's nothing to thank. Just treat it as me making up for my hesitation 3 years ago. No Name Base Conference Room. Welcome back, Senior Letitia. The Black Rabbit hugged Letitia happily and rubbed against the ground. The return of his former companions really made Black Rabbit quite happy. However, Juyuo Asuka and Haruhai Byaori looked at the fat on the chest of the Black Rabbit that had buried Letitia's head, and then looked at their own chests. Black Rabbit, your extra meat is really too much of a hindrance. He needs to be punished. After the two of them finished speaking, they grabbed the Black Rabbit's ears. Ah! Why are you treating the Black Rabbit like this? Looking at Kyugu Asuka and Haruhai Byaoi, Letitia smiled gratefully. It could be considered that they had saved her from suffocating to death. Welcome back, Letitia. Ren stepped forward and congratulated Letitia on her return. Thanks for your hard work, Ren. Letitia said to Ren apologetically. Then Letitia looked around. Speaking of which, where did Servillo go? That guy, maybe he went to have fun by himself. 16 Knights, who was casually sitting on the sofa, waved his hand. At this time, Wu Ming's voice was heard. Your words really hurt me, Shikuni-kun. Chapter 601. A purplish-black portal suddenly appeared beside 16 Knights, and Wu Ming walked out of it. Villo-sama. Letitia looked at Wu Ming gratefully and bowed. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Wu Ming walked in front of Letitia and rubbed her head. I didn't do anything. If you want to thank someone, thank 16 Knights. Your return depended on him. Hey bro, are you making fun of me? Hearing Wu Ming's words, 16 Knights suddenly shouted in a bad mood. Although I have other ways, I've only contributed a little in this matter. Let's just go through the motions. After all, if it wasn't for Wu Ming, then Luo's definitely wouldn't have started the gift competition. And even without 16 Knights, there was still Jiufei Niao and Kasuga Hiroyuki to win the gift competition, not to mention that Wu Ming himself could participate. What credit if it's mine? No one can take it away. But if it's not mine, then I definitely won't take it away. 16 Knights' evil aesthetic was fully exposed. By the way, since Villo-sama already took Perseus, why not just transfer me to No Name? Why do you still want to have a gift competition? Letitia complained. This was simply Wu Ming giving his own things as a prize for the gift competition that his community participated in. It was very strange in itself. However, Wu Ming shook his head at Letitia's complaint. It's not the same, Letitia. Although Wu Ming was also a member of No Name, donating his own things to the community felt like giving alms. Although Letitia might become Wu Ming's possession again, moreover, the limelight had been stolen by Wu Ming alone this time. No matter what, they had to give the others a chance to perform. Although Jiufei Niao and Kasuga Hiroyuki still didn't appear. And the most important thing was, we still have to rely on this gift competition to establish our prestige, Blonde Loli, 16 Knights said rudely to Letitia. Only then did Letitia remember that she had ruined No Name's plan to build up its reputation. I'm really sorry, everyone. Letitia bowed to everyone guiltily. Then Wuming flicked her head. But it's fine as long as the result is good. Wuming smiled as he looked at Letitia, who was crouching down with tears in her eyes due to the pain in her head. Although he knew that Letitia might be a few hundred years old, she was still a cute creature. Speaking of which, what happened to the plan? Wuming looked at Run. This time Mr. 16 Knights performed very well. Coincidentally, he also met the subordinates of the high-level Demon King in the gift competition. He successfully made a name for himself. At this moment, Ren acted like a leader and was quite calm. All in all, the plan was a great success. 16th Knights raised his arm to show his victory. Well, it's fine as long as the plan is completed. Wuming shrugged his shoulders. Actually, Wuming didn't know what the gift competition was about. Wuming only told Luos to play according to the original game. But even so, Wuming still dared to let 16th Knights participate in the gift competition. This was the so-called trust. Wuming believed that 16th Knights could win, and 16th Knights didn't disappoint Wuming. Not to mention, 16th Knights also met the subordinates of the high-level Demon King in the box court, which really made No Name famous. However, since there were high-level people participating in the gift competition, it seemed like Letitia's identity wasn't ordinary. Wuming looked at Letitia, who was still rubbing her forehead with tears in her eyes, and was once again struck by her cuteness. Shaking his head, Wuming threw the question of Letitia's identity to the back of his mind and started the main topic. I just went to Byakuya's place to ask about some things. Wuming's expression began to become serious, which made Komodo Asuka and Haruai Hiroyuki stop teasing Black Rabbit and become serious. Now Letitia, I'll give you 3 choices. Wuming looked at Letitia. First, become my dependent and share my honor and disgrace, but the price is to become my person. Second, accept my blessing, but the price is to receive another blessing every once in a while, and the process may be very cruel for you. Third, don't accept the above 2 proposals, give up becoming my dependent, and give up receiving my blessing. Wuming briefly finished the 3 choices. Although it was brief, it was easy to understand, and there was no one present who didn't understand. But Letitia was puzzled. But Villo-sama, didn't you say that after I return to No Name, you will let me accept your power and become the guardian of No Name? This seemed to be different from what he said at the beginning. Of course, it wasn't that Letitia was calculative, but she was puzzled by the 3rd choice Wuming gave her. If the first and second choices were to choose the way to obtain power, then the 3rd choice was to let Letitia give up. Letitia didn't understand Wuming's intention. After Letitia asked this question, the scene fell into silence. Because of this silent atmosphere, even Black Rabbit didn't dare to rub her rabbit ears. After a moment, Wuming sighed. It's actually like this, Letitia. Then Wuming told Letitia the reason. In other words, you can't find a way for me to recover my strength and obtain godhood for the time being, but you don't want me to bear your shackles, so you gave me 3 choices? Letitia concluded Wuming's words. But Letitia smiled. You're really gentle, Mr. Villo. Gentle? Gentle? Wuming was surprised. He didn't think he was gentle. Wuming just didn't want Letitia to sell him to Wuming without knowing why. But it seemed to be a little gentle. Cough cough. In short, you can choose the 3rd choice, but you don't have to worry. I will see if I can help you find your godhood in the future and restore your strength. But Letitia directly rejected. No need, Mr. Villo. Then, Letitia looked firmly at Wuming's eyes that were the same color as hers. I choose the 1st choice. Become my dependent. But you have to know, if you become my dependent, there is a high possibility that there is no way to remove it. At least Wuming tried to see if he could remove it. Then, Mr. Wuming, if I become your dependent, I won't be able to stay in No Name? Of course not. The disadvantage is that you will be branded with my mark and share my life. It won't affect you in any other way. Wuming shook his head. Then Wuming looked at Run, Black Rabbit, and the others. What about you guys? Don't you object to Letitia's decision? But they all shook their heads in response to Wuming. Even if we are companions, we will respect Letitia Senpai's choice. Black Rabbit looked indignant. Black Rabbit is right. Our companions chose the right path. We have no right to stop them. Ren added. I didn't do anything this time. I won't say anything. Jiu Yuanfei crossed her arms and sat on the sofa. Same. Haruai Toshi nodded and sat down with Jiu Yuanfei. Finally, Wuming looked at 16th Knights. Hey, what are you looking at me for? I don't care about such troublesome things. 16th Knights had a whatever you want look. After sighing, Wuming finally looked at Letitia. Letitia, you might not understand the importance of becoming my dependent. Come here. Wuming gestured at Letitia. Letitia obediently walked over. Then, Wuming squatted down and pressed his forehead against Letitia's. Instantly, Wuming passed the description of dependent's ability to Letitia. After a moment, Wuming stood up and looked at Letitia again. I see. Is that what Villo-senpai meant? Letitia nodded thoughtfully. Then, do you still have the option to continue, Letitia? But Letitia smiled. Yes. Looking around at everyone, then looking at Letitia, Wuming sighed. If that's the case, then so be it. Wuming squatted down again and smiled at Letitia. It's too late to regret, my dependent. But Letitia smiled back. Yes, my master. Chapter 602. There wasn't much fancy light. Wuming and Letitia just held hands, and the contract ceremony was over. Is it over? Black Rabbit stared at Wuming and Letitia curiously with her big rabbit eyes. Ren was also curious. As for the three problem children, although they were not as obvious as Black Rabbit and Ren, Wuming still noticed their curious gazes. At that moment, Wuming could only smile helplessly. What do you want to see? A dazzling magic array? Shifeng shrugged as he walked over to the sofa and sat down. Letitia also followed Wuming over, but she did not sit down with him. Instead, she stood behind Wuming. She was completely treating herself as Wuming's dependent. Well, Letitia, although you are still my dependent, you don't have to always follow me. Nominally, you are still a companion of no name. Wuming corrected Letitia's thoughts. However, Letitia was more stubborn than Wuming imagined. But master, you are indeed my master, aren't you? Letitia feels that there is nothing wrong with serving master. Letitia smiled slightly. I am a member of no name, but before that, I am master's dependent. This made Wuming somewhat helpless. Wuming always felt that his dependent incarnation had the intention of brainwashing. However, Wuming's thoughts were not wrong. After all, this was an ability evolved from the combination of two gods' authority and Wuming's own power. How could it be as simple as a contract? Once a contract was signed with Wuming, whether it was forced or voluntary, this contract would subtly make the dependent who signed the contract truly become Wuming's person. Whether it was physically or mentally. Well, after all, Mr. Villo has already become Senior Letitia's main god. I think Senior Letitia's approach is not wrong. Black Rabbit smiled. It didn't matter what it was, as long as their companions could be together with everyone in no name, safe and sound. This was Black Rabbit's simple and greedy way of thinking. Lord God or whatever, you can't actually say that. No, forget it, just think of it that way. Holding on to the idea that the more he explained, the messier it would get, Wuming simply allowed the Black Rabbit to fantasize. It was fine as long as it did not cause any harm. I am quite envious of you, little brother. Now you have a blonde lowly maid, I would like to try it. 16 Knights jokingly said enviously. However, 16's words made Letitia's eyes slightly lit up. It was not only Letitia's interest, but Haru's interest as well. You don't say. I haven't enjoyed being served by a blonde maid before. He had to admit that Distant Bird was indeed a young mistress. It seemed like she had quite a few maids at home. Envious. Haru's face was, who was a fake, who was a who was a who was a who was and who was who. I have received service from many people, and I have even received service from people of other races. Wuming said as if he was reminiscing. In Connaught, although Wuming was Maeve's guard, in that place where the strong were respected, Wuming was still very respected. In Camelot, as an extremely senior knight, Wuming also had many servants. In Uruk, Wuming had become a god, so naturally, the service would not be less. Wuming's entire nasalic was Wuming's, so naturally, he had many subordinates. Wuming in the Godslayer's world was also treated as a king, and Wuming in Rick's world also had a group of skywing species. Thinking about it this way, was Wuming actually a person of the bourgeoisie? Oh, then have you ever received service from a blonde maid? Haru asked with interest. As expected of a young mistress, she really was an evil bourgeoisie. Asterisk. Omega asterisk. Asterisk. Although I don't have a blonde maid, I do have a blonde female knight in another world. Wuming thought of Erika, who was also a young mistress like Haru. Speaking of which, she is also a young mistress of a European noble family. A noble female knight. Letitia's eyes turned cold. Letitia emitted a slightly terrifying aura. Wuming was stunned, but he immediately reacted. As a vampire, Letitia was known as a knight of the box court. In this way, her attributes were duplicated. Golden-haired noble, knight, and silent subordinates. This made Letitia a little unhappy. Cough cough. But she didn't become my dependent. She only serves me in name. When Wuming said this, Letitia's terrifying aura dissipated. I'm sorry, master. Your power is a little too strong. I can't control it for the time being. Letitia bowed to Wuming and apologized. Just the fluctuation of her emotions caused a change in her aura. It was enough to show that Letitia's strength had recovered. Senior Letitia, are you really okay? Do you need to rest? Black Rabbit looked at Letitia with slight worry. There were also drawbacks to suddenly obtaining great power. It meant that she was not proficient in controlling it. There's no need, Black Rabbit. I'm just not used to it. I'll be fine after a while. Letitia expressed that she wanted to stay by Wuming's side. At this time, Wuming spoke. Since Letitia doesn't want to, then don't force it. After all, after becoming Wuming's dependent, Letitia was like a spring resurrection. She did not look weak at all. Speaking of which, little brother, your blonde loli is really interesting. 16 knights looked at Letitia with fighting spirit. Obviously, Letitia had aroused 16 knights' interest in the strong. Speaking of strength, Wuming wanted to ask something. Right, Letitia, how was your strength before? Wuming looked at Letitia behind him. My strength before? If I didn't lose my quintessence, I would be in the 4 digits. Letitia thought and responded to Wuming. 4 digits, huh? Wuming nodded. In Wuming's opinion, 16 knights' strength should also be in the 4 digits. And now, after becoming Wuming's dependent, Letitia's strength should have returned to the 4 digits. In short, it should not be worse than before. Oh, interesting, to be able to have a blonde noble in the 4 digits be your maid, little brother, you're really lucky. 16 knights laughed and teased. And I need a lot of people to serve me. Toshi said lightly. It seems that your experience is more interesting than we thought. Jiuyuki said with interest. Jiuyuki's words also got Toshi's agreement. Agreed, I want to hear the Villo's story from before. The story from before. Wuming thought for a while. There was nothing important at the moment, so it was not impossible to talk about it. Then Wuming looked at everyone's interested faces and smiled. Well, in that case, I'll talk about my story. Chapter 603. Everyone sat around the coffee table in the meeting room, listening to Wuming telling his story. Then, did you really defeat the last king? Didn't you say that he's immortal? Jiufei Niao leaned forward like a child, looking at Wuming in anticipation. Although Rama is immortal, it doesn't mean that he can keep fighting. I'll just beat him back to his original form. Wuming shrugged. Original form. Black Rabbit was shocked. Could a god be beaten back to his original form? Wuming smiled helplessly as he noticed Black Rabbit's shock. The original form I'm talking about is his weapon, the Savior Divine Sword. Since he's the last king, the hero, the gods gave him an amalgamation of countless god relics. That's the Savior Divine Sword, Wuming said and waved his hand. A sacred sword appeared in Wuming's hand. It was the Savior Divine Sword. However, since Wuming was in his spiritual form, the Savior Divine Sword was not the real thing. Instead, it was the spirit of the Savior Divine Sword. Just like a servant's relic, It was not a physical relic. Instead, it was an amalgamation of powerful magic. The Savior Divine Sword was just like that. If someone defeats him, he'll return to the Savior Divine Sword. When he returned to the Savior Divine Sword, I replaced him and squeezed Rama out of it. Everyone gathered around the Savior Divine Sword immediately. It's really a powerful weapon. Ren looked at the sacred sword in Wu Ming's hand in all seriousness. He could feel a powerful pressure from the sword. You squeezed Rama out of it? I'm really curious how you did it. Jiu Fei Niao tapped the Savior Divine Sword softly. Wu Ming smiled helplessly. That's just a metaphor. I've just replaced Rama as the last king. If that's the case, aren't you a god? 16 Knights put his hands in his pockets. Actually, I have been one for a long time. Wu Ming stared at 16th Knights with his dead fish eyes. Although Wu Ming had only told the story of the Godslayer world, he had also told everyone about the god of disobedience and the parallel world. After all, if Wu Ming were to bump into someone like Romo in the courtyard, it would be awkward if he didn't know who that person was. Wu Ming also told everyone that he had once been worshipped as a god. Yes, Lord Ghost Deity. 16 Knights waved his hand casually, looking rather perfunctory. By the way, Villo, since you've obtained the Blade of Salvation, did you inherit the godly equipment as well? Jiu Yuanfei asked as he toyed with the Blade of Salvation. In response, Wu Ming smiled. Of course, I won't return those divine artifacts to the gods of that parallel world. As Wu Ming spoke, he tossed the Blade of Salvation away gently. In an instant, the Blade of Salvation flew behind Wu Ming and disintegrated in the air. In the next moment, the space behind Wu Ming fluctuated, and the outline of a square appeared. Then, a phalanx containing all kinds of weapons with golden hair and ancient auras appeared behind Silent Blade. Everyone was stunned. Judging from the ancient and powerful aura, they were sure that those divine artifacts were authentic. However, there was a trace of strangeness to these genuine goods, as if they were mirages. That was because the Blade of Salvation was a spiritual body. Even the weapons in the mandala square formation were spiritual bodies. Wu Ming felt that he was becoming more and more like a hero spirit. His body, relic, and everything else were similar. Of course, as long as he could find his original body, everything would be fine. Maybe it's because the last king is Rama. The storage space created by the gods is similar to the mandala square formation. Wu Ming said as he put away the mandala square formation. My master is really an incredible person. Letitia, who was sitting beside Wu Ming, said with a smile. After all, Wu Ming took a long time to tell the story. Hence, in the middle of the story, Wu Ming asked Letitia to sit down. I'm grateful for everything that I've encountered. It's because of those stories that my life is so fulfilling. Wu Ming's open-mindedness made the members of No Name look at Wu Ming in a new light. Are you an imposter? Jiu Yuanfei squinted her eyes. Why do you say that? Wu Ming asked awkwardly as he did not understand. The Villo is obviously a problematic child. How could a problematic child say something like that? Haruhi Byoshi nodded. That's why, little brother, you have to learn from us. 16 Knights spread out his hands with an arrogant expression on his face. Then 3 slapping sounds were heard. Slap, slap, slap. Black Rabbit took a paper fan and hit 16 Knights, Asuhai Byoshi, and Yoshi's heads. The 3 of you are problematic children. Although Mr. Villo is slightly problematic, compared to the 3 of you, Mr. Villo is much more stable. Don't lead him astray. Black Rabbit looked at the 3 problematic children angrily with a paper fan, warning them not to lead Wu Ming astray. Wu Ming touched his nose in embarrassment. Then, the 3 problematic children answered Black Rabbit with a smile. Don't worry, we'll definitely take action against the Villo. You 3 problematic children. Ah. Black Rabbit was going crazy. Then Run, the good guy, started to mediate between them. He stopped watching Black Rabbit and the other 3's farce and looked at the sky outside. Unknowingly, it's already so late? Wu Ming said faintly. The sky outside was already dark, and the sun had already set. As Wu Ming's wife, Letitia spoke. Indeed, Master, your story is very fascinating. Lily came here once before, but because she saw that Master was so interested in your story, she left on her own. Oh, Lily came before? I'm sorry, Wu Ming said apologetically. The Lily that Wu Ming and Letitia were talking about was the oldest child besides Run. She was a cute half-beast Loli. The 3 meals for the contestants in No Name were basically prepared by Lily. Previously, when Lily came to look for them, it was probably to invite them to eat. However, because everyone was too engrossed in Wu Ming's story, it was delayed. Alright, it's already very late. Lily and the others must be waiting anxiously. Let's hurry over. After stopping the farce between Black Rabbit and the problematic children, everyone left the meeting room and went to the cafeteria. Somewhere in the forest that belonged to the end of the world, Glea and the unknown girl were brought to a cave by the unkillable Maxwell. Just as they reached the entrance of the cave, 2 figures walked out. A man with a cloak, whose face could not be seen clearly, and judging from his height, he looked like a 10-year-old child. A woman with a similar cloak and a golden harp, whose face could not be seen clearly, walked out. The woman walked beside the boy, and it was obvious who was in the dominant position. Did something happen? The boy asked. As soon as the boy spoke, Glea and the girl bowed their heads respectfully. Sorry, Your Highness, we met his soul. The girl who was stabbed by Wu Ming lowered her head and said guiltily, If it's him, it's not strange that you're not his match. Being able to escape from him with just a little injury is already very good. His Highness seemed to know about Wu Ming's strength, so he did not blame the girl. Then His Highness looked at Maxwell. Thank you, Maxwell. If it weren't for you this time, Ling and Elder Gu would be in trouble. However, in the face of His Highness' gratitude, Maxwell did not seem to appreciate it. I'm just following orders. It's better to be careful in the future. After all, even if I were to face him, it wouldn't be so easy to deal with him. Maxwell said casually. He still remembered that his body was shattered by Wu Ming's blow. If it weren't for his special body, he would have died long ago. His Highness did not say anything about Maxwell's disrespect. Ignoring the issue of position, after all, Glea and Ling were able to come back this time because of him. Your Highness, what should we do next? The woman beside His Highness asked. His Highness smiled casually. Isn't that Demon King going to collect companions? I have a feeling that No Name will definitely go against her. We just have to wait and see. Glea, Ling, and the black-robed woman replied respectfully. Yes. Only Maxwell did not respond to His Highness. However, His Highness was used to it. However, being used to it did not mean that he could tolerate it. Chapter 604. Wu Ming's time in the box court didn't pass slowly. After Letitia's gift competition ended, Wu Ming acted as if he was living in the library. If he had nothing to do, he would stay in the No Name underground library, flipping through books to supplement his knowledge. Ren and 16 Knights would also come to the library from time to time. The former wanted to increase her knowledge as a community leader, while the latter was simply interested in books. It had to be said that 16 Knights was surprisingly smart. As a result, the male core members of No Name became friends of the library. As for Jio Yuasuka, Haruai Hiroyuki, Black Rabbit, Letitia, and the other women, when they had nothing to do, they would chat and have tea parties. And when they had nothing to do, they would participate in the gift competition. By the way, 16 Knights and Run were the same. After all, the two of them came to the library to read in their free time. They weren't like Wu Ming, who almost treated the library as his home. Because they showed off their skills in the gift competition held by Perseus, with Letitia as the prize, they also made a name for themselves. Although no one came to join No Name, now No Name wasn't a community that everyone looked down on. At the very least, No Name changed from the No Name that was invaded by the Demon King to the No Name that has some ability in the name of defeating the Demon King. No matter what, it was better than not having anything. The 3 problem children participated in various gift competitions because of their interest. As the community leader, Ren also participated in a few gift competitions that weren't too difficult, but she spent most of her time in the library with Wu Ming. As for Black Rabbit, she continued to do the work provided by White Yiksha, acting as a referee to earn money for the community. Although Wu Ming sold Perseus after Letitia's gift competition, because the No Name people thought that it was Wu Ming's private property, They rejected Wu Ming's unconditional gift and chose to borrow it. In fact, it was mainly the three problem children who were making a ruckus. Words like, "I don't accept charity," and "I'm ashamed of it," kept coming out of his mouth. This made Runha Black Rabbit subtly reject Wu Ming's donations. Left with no choice, Wu Ming could only use the excuse of borrowing to lend most of the money from Perseus to No Name. Thanks to this, No Name's food became better. After all, the money that Wu Ming lent to No Name was half of the assets of Perseus after the sale of Perseus. A community that was originally worth 5 figures was worth a lot of money. But why was it only half of his assets? Cough cough. After all, Wu Ming was also short of money. Although Wu Ming could sell some of his treasures for a good price, he had to keep the good stuff for himself. And now, the situation had turned into a situation where Black Rabbit was working hard to earn money for Wu Ming, its creditor. Even if it was its partner's money, Black Rabbit would not take it for granted. It was not strange for it to work hard to earn money to repay Wu Ming. Actually, the most important thing was Black Rabbit's race. The Moon Rabbit was a race that sacrificed and contributed. This kind of freeloading made the Black Rabbit feel a deep sense of guilt. Wu Ming could not say anything, so he could only let Black Rabbit do whatever it wanted. However, there was one thing worth celebrating. Black Rabbit finally did not have to sell its body to earn money. It listened to White Yiksha and changed into specific clothes. Its reward for being a judge would be doubled. White Yiksha was angry for a few days because of this. Wu Ming once again took out some good stuff to share with White Yiksha. Only then did White Yiksha stop throwing a tantrum. Wu Ming could not help but doubt White Yiksha's integrity. All in all, No Name had begun to prosper. In the morning, Wu Ming woke up from his sleep. The first thing he did when he opened his eyes was to look at the sunlight outside the window. Although Wu Ming looked like he was going to live in the library, that was only a metaphor. Wu Ming was still living in the room he had chosen. What a nice weather. Wu Ming stretched and slowly sat up from the bed. That's why, Master. Don't stay in the library anymore. Go out for a walk and participate in some gift competitions. Letitia's distressed voice came from Wu Ming's room. Wu Ming did not find it strange that Letitia was in his room, because Wu Ming had basically spent his days in No Name, like this. Wu Ming went from not adapting on the first day to being casual now. It could only be said that time really changed a person. 16 nights and the others are enough. I'd better read honestly, Wu Ming said casually. However, it's still better to go out for a walk. Even as a ghost, I can't stand staying in the library for a long time. While speaking, Wu Ming looked at where Letitia was. Then Wu Ming, who was staring at Letitia's figure, did not know whether to laugh or cry. At that moment, Letitia had removed her red jacket and replaced it with a blue and white lowly maid outfit. By the way, on the first day that Letitia became Wu Ming's dependent, she had appeared in Wu Ming's room dressed like this. Otherwise, with Wu Ming's temperament, how could he not adapt to having a girl in his room in the morning? The thing he was most uncomfortable with was Letitia's maid outfit. Although I have asked many times Letitia, I still can't help but ask, as my dependent, why do you have to wear a maid outfit? Wu Ming asked, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Then, although this subordinate has answered Master many times, this subordinate will still answer you that this is the necessary equipment to serve Master. Listening to Letitia's serious lowly voice and looking at Letitia's serious lowly face, Wu Ming really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In Wu Ming's view, Letitia was definitely interested in the maid, that 16 nights said before. Although I don't like maid outfits, in order to better serve Master, this subordinate deliberately endured the humiliation and chose to wear this outfit, Letitia said seriously. However, in Wu Ming's view, Letitia was completely enjoying it. However, Wu Ming had given up struggling. Anyway, Letitia wearing a maid outfit was not bad, just treat it as eye candy. Shaking his head, Wu Ming moved his body and prepared to get off the bed. Master, do you need to wash up? Letitia was really like a maid, asking Wu Ming. Same old rules, Wu Ming said casually. Letitia nodded. Then Letitia's shadow floated, and some toiletries appeared. Wu Ming was not surprised by this scene, because Letitia had been serving Wu Ming since the beginning, and Wu Ming was used to it. After a few minutes, Wu Ming finished washing up, Then under Letitia's service, Wu Ming walked out of the room. As soon as he opened the door, Wu Ming saw an acquaintance. "Oh, you're finally up." Chapter 605. Flying Bird. Wu Ming was slightly surprised. That's right. The person that Wu Ming saw when he opened the door was one of the 3 problem children, Jiu Yuanfei. At this moment, Flying Bird was wearing a red dress that Black Rabbit helped to modify. She crossed her arms and looked at Wu Ming. It seemed like she had been waiting for Wu Ming for a long time. "What a surprise, you actually came looking for me." It wasn't that their relationship was bad, but because Jiu Yuanfei usually worked with the girls. When she was with Wu Ming and the other boys, it was always a scene where everyone was present. Just like now, Jiu Yuanfei came looking for Wu Ming alone, which really surprised Wu Ming. "What's there to be surprised about? I naturally came looking for you for something." Jiu Yuanfei raised her eyebrows and said unhappily. But just as Jiu Yuanfei finished speaking, her stomach growled. Rumble. This made Jiu Yuanfei's face instantly turn red. Wu Ming and Letitia looked at each other and smiled. Then Wu Ming opened his mouth. "You haven't eaten yet, right? Let's talk as we walk." Jiu Yuanfei nodded. Wu Ming and Jiu Yuanfei walked side by side. The maid Letitia followed behind Wu Ming. On the way to the no-name cafeteria, Wu Ming asked Jiu Yuanfei why she was here. Then, "Why did you come looking for me?" But Jiu Yuanfei was a little dissatisfied with Wu Ming. "You rascal, didn't you say that after the matter with Letitia was over, we would study my gift together? Did you forget?" Jiu Yuanfei pouted. Wu Ming's body slightly paused. Then Wu Ming smiled at Jiu Yuanfei. How could I forget? It's just that these 2 days I was a little addicted to the books in the library. Actually, I decided not to go to the library today. I was going to look for you." Wu Ming answered Jiu Yuanfei awkwardly. "Letitia can testify for me. I really did decide not to go to the library today, right Letitia?" Wu Ming looked at Letitia and gave her a look. This made Letitia not knowing whether to laugh or cry. But no matter what, this was her master. She still had to give her some face. "Miss Flying Bird, Master really did decide not to go to the library today. Although he didn't want to go look for you. But this was something that Letitia would definitely not say." "I'll believe you for now." Jiu Yuan Flying Bird did not say anything else. However, she wasn't stupid enough to believe that Letitia was Wu Ming's subordinate. She was just giving Wu Ming face. After breakfast, Wu Ming and Jiu Yuanfei came to a wasteland in no name. Beside them Letitia, 16 Knights, Haruai Hiroyuki, Black Rabbit, Run and the others. Even the little fox girl Lily came. At that moment, Wu Ming cursed helplessly. "I say, why is everyone here?" The one who answered Wu Ming turned back to 16 Knights with interest. "Isn't it obvious? Little brother, how could we miss out on something as interesting as researching gifts?" 16 Knights' words made Haruai Hiroyuki nod in agreement. Black Rabbit, "Because I don't have work today, I heard that Miss Flying Bird and Mr. Villo are researching gifts, so I came." Black Rabbit smiled and touched his head. I. Run stuttered as he tried to explain, but Wu Ming interrupted him. "Okay, I'm not blaming you. There's no need to find a reason. If you want to see it, just come." Wu Ming shook his head. Then, Wu Ming looked at Jiu Yuanfei. "Then let's begin, Flying Bird." "Okay." Jiu Yuanfei nodded. "But what should I do?" Jiu Yuanfei asked. Although it was researching gifts, how should she research her aura? "That's easy." Wu Ming smiled. "Isn't your gift domination? If I'm not wrong, you haven't tried to dominate inanimate objects." Because of her dislike of the gift of domination, Jiu Yuanfei tried not to use it. After hearing Wu Ming's words, Jiu Yuanfei nodded. Jiu Yuanfei had no choice but to use domination on inanimate objects. Needless to say, Jiu Yuanfei wouldn't use domination on inanimate objects. "Then, you can try domination on inanimate objects." After Wu Ming said that, he snapped his fingers. A sword that looked exactly like the divine blade of salvation, or rather, Excalibur, appeared in Wu Ming's hand. "This is a fake holy sword that I created using magic. When you say its name, it can release a shockwave of light." As he said that, Wu Ming threw the sword at Jiu Yuanfei. "Miss Flying Bird." Facing such a sharp weapon, everyone was shocked. Black Rabbit even shouted. Not only was the crowd shocked, even Miss Jiao Fei Niao was shocked. Stop! As if his words were a law, the fake holy sword that Wu Ming threw out wobbled and stopped in the air. Then, as if the words of a bird were too weak, the fake holy sword only stopped for a moment before it fell to the ground and stuck firmly in the ground. At the same time, Jiu Yuanfei showed a tired expression. It seemed like Jiu Yuanfei was not able to control inanimate objects well. She still lacked training. However, this was also related to the object that she controlled. Although the fake holy sword was a fake, it was still a holy sword. At most, it could be considered a temporary holy sword. Wu Ming guessed that Jiu Yuanfei, who did not train herself, would not be able to control the fake holy sword well. Just as Wu Ming was thinking, Jiu Yuanfei opened her mouth angrily. What are you doing? It's too dangerous. Jiu Yuanfei put one hand on her waist and pointed at the fake holy sword in front of her as she angrily said to Wu Ming. Obviously, if Jiu Yuanfei did not control the holy sword would have landed on Jiu Yuanfei's head. Sorry. That was also to test your ability. After all, a person's potential will only explode in danger, right? Wu Ming apologized sincerely. Although humans were such animals, Wu Ming's actions still made Jiu Yuanfei unhappy. However, a serious expression appeared on Wu Ming's face. Although that is the case, I will definitely not let my comrades get hurt. If you did not stop that sword, I would have destroyed it before it landed. Silent Bird's words about not letting his companions get hurt made Jiu Yuan Flying Bird feel a little better. If you are in danger next time, I will not let you get hurt as well. Consider this as me owing you a favor. Wu Ming smiled. Then it's a deal. Jiu Yuanfei looked as if she had taken advantage of him. Then what should we do next? However, Wu Ming's next words shocked everyone. Pick up that fake holy sword and attack me, Yuanfei. Chapter 606. Flying Bird was surprised. Black Rabbit's surprised voice was even louder than Jiu Fei's. Will there be any danger, Villo? Black Rabbit was worried. Even though the three problem children would tease Black Rabbit from time to time after coming to this world, and Black Rabbit was also quite angry, Black Rabbit had never been angry from the bottom of her heart. Because they were companions, Black Rabbit's companions. Black Rabbit did not want to see her companions get hurt. Even if she had to sacrifice herself for her companions, Black Rabbit was not willing to let her companions get hurt. Otherwise, why would nothing happen to Black Rabbit every time she attacked the three problem children? It was because Black Rabbit did not want to attack at all. Then, Wu Ming was the same to Black Rabbit. She did not want to see him get hurt either. At this time, Letitia pulled Black Rabbit's skirt. Don't worry, Black Rabbit. Letitia smiled confidently. Master is very strong. A mere fake holy sword won't be able to hurt him. As a dependent who obtained Wu Ming's power, Letitia was the most qualified to say this. Don't worry, Black Rabbit. I'm not mocking Flying Bird. She doesn't have the ability to hurt you now. Although it was arrogant, it was the truth. Jiu Fei's gift was not effective on Wu Ming. Even with this fake holy sword made by Wu Ming, it was still unknown whether it could hurt Wu Ming. However, Wu Ming's taunt caused the word Jing to appear above Jiu Yuan Flying Bird's head. His originally hesitant heart immediately became firm. Her good mood also became bad. After all, no matter who was called weak, that person would not be happy. Being angry was the least of it. Even if the other party did not mean to mock. You said it, Villo. I won't take responsibility if you get hurt. Jiu Fei's little face puffed up as she angrily pulled out the fake holy sword from the ground. The holy sword's heavy weight made Jiu Fei's delicate body wobble. She almost lost her balance. However, this was something that Wu Ming was happy to see. If Jiu Fei didn't want to do it, it would give Wu Ming a headache. No problem. Bring it on. Wu Ming smiled warmly. However, to Jiu Fei Niao, this smile seemed to be mocking her. If Wu Ming knew what Distant Flying Bird was thinking, he would have cried out that he had been wronged. He was only interested in what Distant Flying Bird's gift would do to the fake holy sword. The holy sword's real name is Excalibur. You just have to raise the holy sword and shout its real name at me before slashing down, Wuming kindly reminded. Excalibur? Kazuhito was shocked. King Arthur's sacred sword, huh? The Villo sure is an interesting friend. As if to explain their surprise, Harui's eyes lit up. However, Laetitia and 16th Knights didn't show any difference. Laetitia was used to her master being too strong, while 16th Knights was thinking about the Excalibur that Wuming mentioned. King Arthur? 16th Knights narrowed his eyes and looked at Wuming. Jiao Fei Niao looked at the holy sword and nodded. Understood. Jiao Fei Niao said and raised the fake holy sword. Instantly, the scene fell into silence. Including Laetitia and the others who were watching, no one made a sound. A gentle breeze blew by and caressed Wuming's short hair. It also blew Jiao Fei Niao's long hair. Kazuhito, Run, and Lily couldn't help but swallow their saliva. They were quite nervous. On the other hand, Laetitia, Harui, and 16th Knights didn't show anything. No, 16th Knight's smile should be said to be quite tyrannical. In the next second, the wind stopped. As if it was a signal, Jiao Fei Niao's eyes trembled. She opened her mouth and shouted the holy sword's real name. Excalibur. Jiao Fei Niao's spiritual words seemed to be attached to the holy sword. The holy sword emitted a dazzling light. The holy sword emitted a light that couldn't be seen clearly. Not only that, the holy sword was still absorbing magic from the surrounding air. More and more light gathered on the holy sword. Perhaps it was because it was the first time that Jiao Fei Niao was controlling an inanimate object. The power gathered on the holy sword was unprecedentedly strong. The light stunned Wuming. This is already comparable to a real holy sword. Black Rabbit and the others were also attracted by the light of the fake holy sword. So pretty. Lily wagged her fox tail, her eyes sparkling like little stars. This power. Jiao Fei Niao looked at the holy sword. She was holding hesitantly. She was afraid that the light was too strong. It was so strong that it might accidentally kill Wuming. Seeing Jiao Fei Niao's hesitation, Wuming shouted loudly, Fei Niao, attack me with all your strength. That way, I can analyze how much your gift has improved this fake holy sword. Although that was what he said, Wuming could more or less guess the use of Jiao Fei Niao's gift. Jiao Fei Niao nodded. Not only because of Wuming's words, Jiao Fei Niao also felt that the holy sword in her hand couldn't hold on for much longer. It felt like it was about to break. Then here I come. Following that, with her trust in Wuming, Jiao Fei Niao didn't hesitate and slashed the holy sword in Wuming's direction. In an instant, the pressure of the holy sword was released. The light on the holy sword seemed to have found an outlet. The light was like a raging wave. It fiercely rushed towards Wuming's direction. At that moment, Wuming gave everyone the feeling of an ant in front of a flood. Jiao Fei Niao, who wasn't worried at first, turned pale. There was no other reason. It was because the holy light that was released was too powerful. The energy contained in it made Jiao Fei Niao's expression change. Stop. Jiao Fei Niao didn't hesitate to control the fake holy sword in her hand again. However, the result disappointed her. Boom! In an instant, the fake holy sword exploded and turned into magic particles that dissipated in the air. Jiao Fei Niao was also forced to take a few steps back from the sudden impact. It was obvious that the fake holy sword couldn't withstand the two completely opposite control spirits. Using her gift to release the real name of the noble phantasm, and using her gift to release the noble phantasm again was like using explosives to break a dam. It was a little too whimsical to want to bet. Miss Fei Niao. Mr. Villo. Black Rabbit couldn't help but shout. However, the most important thing was still Wuming, because if Wuming was an ordinary person, he would be dead. Lily Runha also looked at Wuming worriedly. Only 16 Knights and Letitia were very calm. This was because 16 Knights and Letitia believed that Wuming wasn't an ordinary person. He was a super strong person. On Wuming's side. Almost at the same time, the holy sword's impact of light arrived in front of Wuming. Facing the holy light that could destroy a city, Wuming stretched out a hand. Chapter 607. Wuming didn't do anything else as he stretched out his hand and started chanting. Thou hast violated the contract and brought sin to the world. Lord's Day, Sinners shall be punished. Crush their backs, dig out their tendons, bones, hair and brains, and trample on their blood and mud. If I am the one who cannot approach the darkness, I will follow the words of the Lord and destroy thee. The moment he finished chanting, the holy light came into contact with Wyrm. Mr. Villo? Black Rabbit panicked and her hair turned pink. But in the next second, everyone, including Black Rabbit, calmed down. The holy light stopped at Wyrm's position. No, it should be said that the moment the holy light came into contact with Wyrm's position, it disappeared for some reason. Moments later, the torrential waves of light disappeared. Everyone saw countless streams of light flowing into Wyrm's palm. And in the middle of Wyrm's palm was a pitch-black hole. The light of the fake holy sword was swallowed by it. Although he was also very curious about this, the most important thing for now was that Wyrm was fine. Phew. Laetitia took a deep breath. Although Laetitia looked like she had victory in her hands, she was actually more afraid than anything else. After all, the relationship between two people changed not only on the surface, but also on a deeper level. Laetitia looked deeply at Wyrm and said softly in a voice that only she could hear, "My master, you're really amazing. So amazing that it's mesmerizing." In short, Wyrm's action made everyone and Jiufei sigh in relief. At this moment, Jiufei, who was relieved, suddenly realized that her body had become weak. She didn't pay attention and fell backward. Unlike 16 knights and Huruai Biao, whose blessings increased their physical strength, Jiufei's blessings didn't increase her physical strength at all. In other words, Jiufei was just a normal person. On the other hand, if an ordinary person were to fall to the ground and injure the back of his head, the consequences would be unimaginable. Even if it didn't hurt the back of the head, for an ordinary person, falling backward would still hurt their back. Feeling the sudden loss of strength in his body, Juyuan Bird helplessly closed his eyes in fear, waiting for the pain from the ground. But after waiting for a while, Distant Bird realized that it didn't feel any pain. On the contrary, it felt like it had fallen into a very warm embrace. In the next second, Juyuan Flying Bird opened its eyes. "Miss, I said I won't let you get hurt," Wyrm teased. "That's a very gentlemanly way of doing things. I'll give you an extra point. I'll even overlook your rudeness of carrying a lady in your arms," Jiao Fei Niao retorted in response to Wyrm's teasing. Then Jiufei Bird looked around and realized that it wasn't Wyrm who had come to her side. Instead, she had come to Wyrm's side. There was a purplish-black ripple where she was standing. At this moment, there was also a purplish-black ripple above her head, which was where Wyrm was. "Ah, is this a teleportation gate? That's interesting." Jiufei Niao revealed an interested smile. This was Juyuan Flying Bird's evaluation after experiencing the teleportation gate personally. Wyrm had forgotten that no matter how much of a missy Juyuan Flying Bird was, a problem child was still a problem child. After escaping from danger, the problem child's nature was revealed. Shaking his head, Wyrm stopped carrying Juyuan Flying Bird. Instead, he placed Juyuan Flying Bird, who seemed to be fine, on the ground. Then Wyrm waved his hand and cancelled the teleportation gate. Then, Wyrm looked at Juyuan Flying Bird. "How are you? Is your body okay?" Wyrm asked. "Thank you for your concern. Although I still feel a little uncomfortable, I'm basically fine." After moving her body, Juyuan Flying Bird replied to Wyrm in a very ladylike manner. Wyrm guessed that Juyuan Flying Bird's sudden lack of strength was the after-effect of using gift overload. After all, Juyuan Flying Bird's gift had not been used much. It was only used on people who were not very strong. This time it was used directly on the holy sword. It was a rather intense operation. Juyuan Flying Bird might not be used to it. Still, even if it was a fake holy sword, it was still a holy sword. Even if Juyuan Flying Bird had one of the strongest gifts of humans, she could not use the fake holy sword that Wyrm made without any after-effects. It was like playing a game. If you completed a rare quest and obtained a rare class, but that class was only level 1, you could not equip the class's level 100 equipment, not even the fake level 50 equipment. "Miss Flying Bird, Mr. Villo, are you guys okay?" Black Rabbit shouted as he ran. His face was full of panic. Renhe Lily was following behind him. "We're fine, Black Rabbit." Ju Yuan Flying Bird shook her head, telling him not to worry. Wah! That was so scary. First, Mr. Villo was almost killed. Then Miss Flying Bird fainted. It was too dangerous. Black Rabbit looked extremely frightened. However, Black Rabbit's words made Wu Ming and Ju Yuan Flying Bird raise their eyebrows. Black Rabbit, what do you mean? I'm super strong. What do you mean by almost killed? And me, what do you mean by fainted? I'm still awake, okay? Wu Ming and Ju Yuan Flying Bird said. Both of them grabbed Black Rabbit's rabbit ears and started to ravage them. Wah wah, Mr. Villo. Miss Flying Bird, let go of me. Black Rabbit instantly became teary-eyed. Wu Ming and Fei Niao looked at each other, smiled, and said in unison. This is your punishment. Wah, you two problem children. Letitia, who was slowly walking over with 16 knights and Haruhai Biayoi, looked helplessly at Wu Ming and Flying Bird bullying Black Rabbit. She did not know what to say. She could only say that Black Rabbit was too cute. Sometimes even she wanted to bully Black Rabbit. However, no matter what, Letitia would still take care of Black Rabbit. Therefore, Letitia quickly ended Black Rabbit's suffering. Master, after experiencing it personally, did you discover anything new about Miss Flying Bird's gift? Letitia asked. Everyone, including Wu Ming and Flying Bird, came back to their senses. That's right. Everyone's initial goal was to study Ju Yuan Flying Bird's gift. Now everyone was admiring Wu Ming and Ju Yuan Flying Bird bullying Black Rabbit. Of course, there's a new discovery. Wu Ming calmly released the rabbit ears that were almost 1 meter long. By the way, Black Rabbit almost cried when it bounced back. I discovered that Flying Bird's gift is not to control, but to give. Chapter 608. Bestowal? Everyone was confused. Yes. Wu Ming nodded. Originally, when Flying Bird controlled the holy sword I made, I didn't see anything. However, when I realized that the control was only temporary, I began to doubt Flying Bird's bestowal. No one said anything. They all looked at Wu Ming, waiting for Wu Ming to continue. And after taking Flying Bird's attack, I was completely sure of Flying Bird's bestowal. Excuse me, could it be that you judged it from the power of that holy sword? 16 Knights raised his hand and asked. At that moment, the problem children, including 16 Knights, didn't cause any trouble. They hid their nature as problem children. Naturally, I know the power of the fake holy sword that I created. Coincidentally, I also have a good understanding of the power of the real holy sword. The holy sword true name liberation that Fei Niao used just now was comparable to the power of the real holy sword. After Wu Ming finished speaking, he felt that his words weren't accurate enough. He shook his head. Although I can see that, I don't have the real holy sword. Therefore, I can't prove it to you. How about this? As Wu Ming said that, he snapped his fingers. A silver holy sword that was different from the Excalibur appeared in Wu Ming's hand. With this holy sword, I can prove it to you. This made 16 Knights smile with interest. So that means you have the real holy sword. Wu Ming shrugged. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he answered with actions. Suddenly, a golden ripple appeared beside Wu Ming, and a silver-white holy sword appeared from it. The silver holy sword emitted a powerful and ancient aura. At first glance, one could tell that it was the so-called Godhead equipment in the box court world. The sword in Jiu Yufei's hand was exactly the same as the holy sword Wu Ming made. It just lacked the powerful and ancient aura. Flying Bird, is your body okay? Wu Ming asked Jiu Distant Flying Bird. No problem. I just wasn't used to it just now. I'm fine now. Jiu Yuan Bird was like a proud cat as he raised his head. Well then, I'll leave this to you. Wu Ming handed the fake holy sword to Jiofar Flying Bird. After Jiu Yuan Flying Bird took it, Wu Ming pulled out the holy sword that was embedded in the golden ripples in the air. Fei Niao, try using your grace on this fake holy sword in your hand. Later, I will synchronize with you and use this real holy sword. Although he couldn't understand Wu Ming's actions, it was probably to prove Wu Ming's conjecture. Jiu Yuan Flying Bird nodded and raised the silver sacred sword. Then, Jiu Yuan Flying Bird looked at the sacred sword in Wu Ming's hand. What is this child's real name? Wu Ming smiled. He was quite happy that Ju Yuan Flying Bird called his sacred sword a child. He stroked the blade of the genuine X-Silver sword in his hand. This child's real name is X-Silver. He has been with me for a long time. Ju Yuan Flying Bird didn't know if the sacred sword had a mind of its own. When Wu Ming stroked the body of the sword, the sacred sword trembled slightly as if it was very happy. Understood. Ju Yuan Flying Bird smiled. After Ju Yuan Flying Bird said, understood. Other than Letitia, who was standing behind Wu Ming, the rest of the no-name, including 16 knights and Haruhito Masaaki, quickly retreated 5 meters away from Ju Yuan Flying Bird. What are you guys doing? Putting down the sacred sword, Ju Yuan Flying Bird turned around and looked at the people who were not too far away. She instantly became speechless. We have no choice, Miss Flying Bird. We have seen the power of the sacred sword just now. It seems very dangerous. It is indeed better to stay a little further away. Black Rabbit smiled embarrassedly as he replied to Ju Yuan Flying Bird's ridicule. Moreover, Mr. Villo is preparing to use the real sacred sword, True Liberation. We have to be careful. Ren touched the back of his head embarrassedly. That's right. Lily also nodded embarrassedly. Wu Ming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he couldn't blame them. After all, Excalibur's noble phantasm wasn't weak, and X-Silver, which was also known as the Holy Sword, naturally wasn't weak either. It wasn't surprising that Wu Ming was able to scare everyone with it. But what about you, 16th Knight? Don't tell me you're scared too? Wu Ming looked at Reverse 16 Knights, who was standing in front of Black Rabbit, Run and the others. Wu Ming heard that in the gift competition where the prize was Letitia, Reverse 16 Knights was the one who broke the other's gift with his bare hands. Although the true liberation of the sacred sword was not weak, Wu Ming didn't think that the true liberation of the sacred sword would have any effect on Reverse 16 Knights when he was up against such a crazy person. Perhaps, with just one punch, the sacred sword's light cannon would be destroyed. Why would I be afraid? It's just that I think it's a little troublesome. I'm the one who hates troublesome things the most. 16 Knights spread out his hands with a smile on his face as he answered Wu Ming helplessly. However, in Wu Ming's opinion, Reverse 16 Knights liked to look for trouble, and also liked to create trouble. He didn't seem to be afraid of trouble at all. Ignoring Reverse 16 Knights for the time being, Wu Ming looked at Haruhi Masaaki, who was beside Reverse 16 Knights. What about you, Masaaki? Are you afraid of trouble too? As a fake girl, Haruhi Masaaki tilted her little head. I'm not afraid of trouble, but they all retreated, so I'll go with them. An extremely calm voice entered Wu Ming's ears, making Wu Ming feel like he was defeated. This made Wu Ming want to say, this time, you won't be completely liberated. There won't be any danger. Please don't worry. Forget it. Wu Ming didn't care about them anymore. Ignore them, Flying Bird. Let's begin. After greeting Flying Bird, Wu Ming and Jiofar Flying Bird raised their sacred swords above their heads. X-Silver. X-Silver. Two completely different true name liberation were chanted by Wu Ming and Jiofar Flying Bird. In an instant, the two silver-white sacred swords gathered a bright silver light. At the same time, the people who were hiding 5 meters behind Wu Ming and Jiofar Flying Bird retreated even further. Hey, little brother, be careful not to misfire. Reverse 16 Knights didn't forget to tease Wu Ming. Wu Ming turned around and looked at Reverse 16 Knights helplessly. Jiofar Flying Bird's attention was on the two sacred swords. Two silver-white lights with the same scale of energy were hidden and covered the silver sacred swords, just like the Excalibur from before. However, looking at the two sacred swords that were emitting the same power, Jiofar Flying Bird seemed to have understood something. Chapter 609. After that, Wu Ming spoke to Ju Yuan Flying Bird, who was in deep thought. That's fine, Flying Bird. Don't we need to release it? Ju Yuan Flying Bird was confused. There's no need for that. After all, we still need to use No Name's land when it regains its vitality. It's not good to destroy this piece of land like this. Ju Yuan Flying Bird was a little embarrassed. She naturally knew what Wu Ming was talking about. Even though Excalibur's attack wasn't aimed at No Name's house, It still managed to plow a large piece of wasteland around No Name. Moreover, it was a very fierce one. Rather than plowing, it would be more accurate to say that they had dug. Moreover, what Wu Ming said was right. After all, they still needed to use the land in the future. It was not good to destroy the land like this. Then that's fine. Zhu Yuan Flying Bird nodded with a little regret. Zhu Yuan Flying Bird actually liked the feeling of releasing the holy sword. After all, it was a light cannon. It was so exciting, and she had released it herself. Therefore, it was understandable that Zhu Yuan Flying Bird wanted to do it again. Wu Ming didn't notice Zhu Yuan Flying Bird's slightly regretful expression. He turned his head and immediately shouted to reverse 16 knights and the others. It's fine. Everyone come over. Seeing that there was no danger, everyone stopped hiding. Instead, they walked over to Wu Ming and Zhu Yuan Flying Bird's side. Wow. It's already very beautiful from afar. Now that it's closer, it's even more beautiful. Little fox girl Lily curiously looked at the holy sword in Wu Ming and Zhu Yuan Flying Bird's hands. Actually, it's even better at night. Wu Ming freed one of his hands and patted Lily's little head. Lily's tail wagged as she enjoyed Wu Ming's touch. After patting little fox girl's head, Wu Ming looked at everyone. Does anyone see anything special about it? Wu Ming asked. Let me ask you a question. How is the quality of this fake holy sword? Zhu Yuan Flying Bird, who was holding the fake holy sword with both hands, asked. Her strength had not yet reached the level where she could lift the charging holy sword with one hand. It's a sacred sword that I casually created. It's an existence that will break upon contact with a slightly stronger weapon. After hearing Wu Ming's words, Distant Bird revealed an I understand smile. However, 16 Knights had already seen through everything. It's a godhead, isn't it? 16 Knights crossed his arms and smiled. Godhood. Black Rabbit was stunned. He did not understand how this had anything to do with godhood. At this moment, Letitia, who was standing behind Wu Ming, also spoke. Is that so? I understand now. Letitia only pondered for a moment before she quickly understood. She was like Zhu Yuan Fei Niao, watching from the side. Not to mention, Letitia only needed to observe and did not need to be distracted at all. It was not strange that she could understand the principle so quickly. At the same time, Haruhibu Yaichi also nodded. So that's how it is. That's why the fake sacred sword in Fei Niao's hand is as powerful as the real one. Haruhibu Yaichi was also very smart. 16 Knights had already told her the answer. How could she not understand the principle behind it? What kind of profound question is everyone talking about? Don't leave Black Rabbit alone. Black Rabbit was irritated because he could not understand what Wu Ming and the others were talking about. However, Black Rabbit had indirectly forgotten about Renwa Lily. He did not know what Wu Ming and the others were talking about. 16 Knights, Distant Bird, and Haruhibu Yaichi looked at each other, smiled, and showed an expression of problem children. Then the three spoke in unison. Be our maid and we'll tell you. 3-inch don't even think about it, you problem children? As if protecting his virginity that was about to be lost, Black Rabbit protected his body and took 2 steps back. Okay, everyone stop teasing Black Rabbit. Letitia came out to mediate. Okay, you're teasing Black Rabbit again? Black Rabbit's face froze, and then roared at the 3 problem children angrily. How could that be? Black Rabbit, we really do want to take you in as a maid. 16 Knights Reversal responded to Black Rabbit with a smile. Black Rabbit snorted and ignored the problem children. Instead, she looked at Wu Ming. Mr. Villo, tell Black Rabbit what's going on. Looking at Black Rabbit, who was already very pitiful, Wu Ming did not have the intention to tease her. In fact, it's already very obvious. I deliberately used a little magic to create a fake sacred sword. The result is that the fake sacred sword in Fei Niao's hand can't exert the power of my real sacred sword, but it reached the power of the real one in Fei Niao's hand. With Wu Ming's explanation and the divinity that 16 Knights mentioned before, Black Rabbit understood. In other words, this fake holy sword has been bestowed with a godhead. That's why it can reach the power of the real one despite its poor quality. Ren asked as if he was confirming something. That's right, that's it. Fei Niao's gift is not control. That's just a byproduct of her true ability. The true nature of Fei Niao's gift is to give the target a simulated divinity, so as to control the target of the simulated divinity. That was also why ancient flying birds could even control a person's heart, just like how it dealt with Guard in the beginning. Because when the gift of the ancient flying bird was activated, Guard, who only had a 7-digit soul, became the ancient flying bird's slave in an extremely short period of time. The reason why it was a simulated divinity was because ancient flying bird could not control a target for a long time. Once this gift was not used, the simulated divinity that existed in a target's body would disappear, unless ancient flying bird continued to use her light of might on a target continuously. And the reason why ancient flying bird's gift did not work on Wuming was also because of this. A simulated divinity was not a real divinity, so it was not that powerful. When ancient flying bird's simulated divinity entered Wuming's body, Wuming's own strength destroyed the simulated divinity, which was a foreign object, so ancient flying bird's control naturally could not be done. However, the ability to give a simulated divinity to a target is already very powerful. No wonder Lord White Yiksha said that flying bird's gift is also one of the strongest gifts of humans. Black Rabbit smiled and looked at ancient flying bird. It must be known that only certain special existences could give divinity. It was not something that any random god could do. And ancient flying bird could give a target divinity with a mere human body, which was already very heaven-defying. And whether it was divinity or simulated divinity, there was not much difference to ancient flying bird. When she was powerful, the simulated divinity would naturally be the same as the divinity. Black Rabbit had a simulated divinity weapon, which was no different from the real one, because it was bestowed by the powerful Sakura. Seeing Black Rabbit's smiling face, Wuming mercilessly dealt a blow. That being said, flying bird's gift has a drawback. Chapter 610. Drawback? Black Rabbit was confused. What kind of drawback could there be to giving someone a simulated divinity? Could it be that they would become problematic children? That was indeed a big drawback. Black Rabbit's imagination ran wild. Is there a drawback to my gift? Jiu Yufei asked with concern. After all, this was related to her future growth. She had to be concerned. Let's try to guess. Wuming was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he let everyone guess. 16 Knights closed his eyes and thought. He recalled the scenes from before and thought of one thing. I'm afraid that misgift would cause the person who was given the simulated divinity to be damaged. 16 Knights opened his eyes and looked at the silver holy sword in Jiu Yufei's hand that was still absorbing light. Then, the fake holy sword in Jiu Yufei's hand seemed to have reached its limit. Without any warning, it exploded like fireworks. Wuming waved his hand when the holy sword exploded. The black hole formed by annihilation covered the position of the holy sword in Jiu Yufei's hand, and absorbed the energy at an extremely fast speed. Then the black hole disappeared. The remaining magic particles of the fake holy sword floated in the air for a while before disappearing completely. The explosion of the holy sword had frightened Black Rabbit and Lily. They were afraid that the explosion of the holy sword would cause the energy inside to leak out. The result was good. The fake holy sword that was given a simulated divinity by Jiu Yufei, along with the energy that it absorbed from the atmosphere, was directly devoured by Wuming's annihilation. The last bit of it turned into magic particles and completely disappeared. Because Wuming used annihilation in time, Jiu Yufei was not hurt. However, even though he wasn't injured, he was still shocked and took a few steps back. After all, it was the thing in her hand that exploded. How could it not be scary? 16 Knights is right. Flying bird's gift seems to cause a huge loss to the person it is given to. Just like the fake holy sword just now. Although it was raised to the same level as the real holy sword because of the divinity, the price was the lifespan issue. That's why the fake holy sword exploded, right? Jiufei Bird said knowingly. This was also the reason why the first fake Excalibur had exploded. At that time, Flying Bird gave the order to stop. That holy sword was also casually created by Wuming. It was already very good that it could release the noble phantasm once. If Flying Bird gave the same order again, it would be considered light if it directly exploded. In any case, the accumulated energy within the sacred sword had been released. If it hadn't been released, Jiu Yuan Fei Bird, who had the body of an ordinary person, might have died on the spot. So if Flying Bird wants to fully utilize the power of its gift, there are only two ways. Wu Ming extended 2 fingers. First, simulate the bestowal of a godhead and use it accordingly. After all, as long as he could find a powerful boon that could withstand the ancient Flying Bird's boon, he wouldn't have to worry about the extreme method of having the boon sacrifice its lifespan to increase its power. As for the second point, 16 Knights spoke. The second point is to prepare a large number of normal boons for Milady. Each of them can be used as a one-time boon, right? 16 Knights smiled. But that means... Letitia and Black Rabbit said in unison, and then paused. Milady Flying Bird's boon actually. Lily Renoir continued Letitia and Black Rabbit's words and paused at the end. It's a very expensive boon. Haruhito Hikari, who was a pseudo 3-nothings, said the last thing. However, Jiu Yuan Fei Bird was dumbfounded. One should know that she, Jiu Yuan Fei Bird, was tired of the status and money in her world, so she abandoned everything and came here. But now she was told that if she wanted to have fun in this game called Hackada World, she would have to pay for it. In other words, Jiu Yuan Fei Bird, who had abandoned her wealth, had to start working for money. Ha ha ha, congratulations, milady. You can return to the time when you were rich. Although she had to earn money herself. 16 Knights laughed mercilessly as a bad friend. But this was the truth, and even Jiu Yuan Fei Bird had nothing to say. Well, since Mr. Villo lent us a lot of money, we can take a part of it to prepare some boons for Milady Flying Bird. After all, boons that could withstand the power of Jiu Yuan Fei Bird's simulated divinity were very rare, so they could only choose the second path. Actually, if Flying Bird needs it, I can create some powerful boons for you. After all, Wu Ming's create green item was not like projection magic, which could only last for a while. Wu Ming could make the item last forever, but it would take some effort. After all, it was very easy for a weak item to reach this stage, but it was very difficult for a powerful item to reach this stage. That was also why Wu Ming did not create a pseudo skylock that could last forever. Instead, he created a time-limited item that needed to be maintained by injecting mana regularly. This was because creating pseudo skylocks that wouldn't disappear was very troublesome. Moreover, the wear and tear during battle made the loss outweigh the gains. It would be better to create pseudo skylocks that would disappear and inject mana into them periodically. By the way, there was only one pseudo skylock left in Wu Ming's relic space. The rest were tied to the American Singularity Hercules, and sunk into the lake with Hercules. However, it did not matter even if all of them were gone. Such a time-limited skylock was easy to create. There's no need. Jiu Yuan Fei Bird successfully resisted Wu Ming's temptation. Jiu Yuan Fei Bird, won't trouble you guys. For the time being, I'll replace it with a normal boon. I'll think of a way to create a powerful boon myself. After all, it was a problem. Asterisk cough asterisk for a proud person. Even if they were her companions, Jiu Yuan Fei Bird would not accept charity. Everyone looked at each other. Facing Jiu Yuan Fei Bird's stubbornness, they could only follow her wishes. Since that's the case, why don't you accept some of my toys? Wu Ming smiled and snapped his fingers. A few holy swords fell to the ground. I told you, I don't need your help. Jiu Yuan Fei Bird crossed her arms in front of her chest and rejected Wu Ming. However, Wu Ming shook his head. You can't say that. What you need are consumable blessings. My sacred swords are also consumable blessings. What's the difference between them? He picked up a holy sword and waved it in front of Jiu Yuan Fei Bird. Since you need a trump card or something like that, these holy swords can be treated as such. However, Wu Ming's words did not move Jiu Yuan Fei Bird, although Wu Ming's words were reasonable. Moreover, I promise to protect you from harm. If you encounter any danger while I'm not by your side, these holy swords can be treated as my protection. Jiu Yuan Fei Bird started to think about the promise. Why does it sound so much like a confession? Black Rabbit complained embarrassedly. Then, Black Rabbit was glared at by Wu Ming and Jiu Yuan Fei Bird. If that's the case, I'll take a few. Jiao Yuan Fei Bird said as she took out her boon card and placed a few of the holy swords on the ground into it. Wu Ming smiled. After all, for a young lady like her, using a promise was more effective. Chapter 611. After Wu Ming's effort, the problem of the distant flying bird was finally solved. After that, Wu Ming prepared to solve the problem of the land. After all, when Letitia persuaded Wu Ming to go out for a walk, Wu Ming didn't think about the problem of flying bird's gift. Instead, he wanted to see if he could solve the problem of No Name's land. After all, it wasn't a good idea to leave it abandoned. However, he couldn't tell Flying Bird about this. Otherwise, with her problematic temper, she would definitely cause a ruckus. After that, Wu Ming suggested that they try to restore the vitality of the land. This made Black Rabbit, Run, and the other No Name members pleasantly surprised. After all, when 16 Knights and the other two joined No Name, the land had already lost its vitality. They, who had never seen No Name's land with vitality, naturally didn't have any expectations. This was like a person who had seen a beautiful scenery and wanted to bring you to see it again. He might be looking forward to it since he had never seen it before. However, if you hadn't seen it before, you wouldn't be able to imagine how beautiful it was. The two were the same. However, humans were such animals. It wasn't that 16 Knights and the other two were cold-blooded and heartless. They were also very concerned about No Name's land being able to restore vitality. After all, this was their home. Mr. Villo, do you have a way to restore the vitality of our land? Black Rabbit's rabbit ears shook as he looked forward to it. If the land can be restored, then we can grow our own vegetables. The little fox girl Lily, who belonged to the logistics team, happily wagged her tail. Although they now had the water tree sapling that Wu Ming and 16 Knights obtained from defeating the water god to provide water, the other ingredients still had to be bought. Although No Name wasn't lacking in money now, generally speaking, larger communities would have their own vegetable gardens and the like. Being self-reliant was not a problem. Just like a country couldn't always rely on foreign imports. If they could rely on themselves, it was better to rely on themselves. Moreover, they should save as much as they could. After all, this money was borrowed from Wu Ming. I'm just giving it a try. I don't dare to boast that I can really restore life to the land of No Name. Wu Ming smiled and shook his head. After all, if you asked Wu Ming to fight, he would absolutely have no objection. But if you asked him to be a doctor or treat an illness, it would be a bit difficult. It wasn't that there weren't any methods to treat it, but Wu Ming hadn't tried treating the soil, so he didn't dare to boast. But he had to give it a try. Everyone had their first time. All in all, Wu Ming went to the land that Long Far Flying Bird had destroyed with the fake holy sword. He started to restore the life force of the land, and the land that Long Far Flying Bird had destroyed. After all, although the land was barren, at least it was still flat and didn't look messy. On the other hand, after Jiao Yufei's holy sword had reclaimed the land, not to mention the huge ravine, there were also some serious bumps. Therefore, Wu Ming decided to take the lead and conduct an experiment on the seemingly messy land to see if he could restore the vitality of the land. If it didn't work, he could also restore the land on this side, right? Everyone stood behind Wu Ming, while Wu Ming stood beside the huge ravine. Then I'll begin, Wu Ming said as he knelt on the ground with one knee. First, a golden ripple suddenly appeared beside Wu Ming. Then, Wu Ming took out a few exquisite glass bottles that contained dark red potions. These were the healing potions from the Yggdrasil game world. Wu Ming opened the exquisite glass bottle and poured the red potion into the ravine. Then, Wu Ming poured all the healing potions he had taken out into the ravine. The red healing potions quickly seeped into the land. Black Rabbit and the others behind Wu Ming watched Wu Ming's series of actions with eyes full of doubt. They really didn't know what the healing potions were. But could it be that by pouring a few bottles of potions, the land that had been abandoned for 3 years after being attacked by the Demon King could be restored? The answer was of course impossible. At least a few of them felt that it was impossible. However, Wu Ming also thought so. Therefore, Wu Ming began the next step, chanting the spirit language. A person with the supreme power of protection, The gods protect him, the demons hate him, 10,000 enemies can't get close to him. Like a fountain of vitality that constantly surges, granting the world equal protection. The magical spirit language came out from Wu Ming's mouth. In just a moment, Black Rabbit and the others felt that Wu Ming's body began to glow, and it was accompanied by the breath of life. That was normal. Wu Ming's vitality, one of the 12 incarnations, was like a never-ending fountain. Vitality gave Wu Ming endless vitality, recovery, and all kinds of resistance. Usually, this ability was used on Wu Ming passively, but the passive effect was not obvious. However, it was still of great help to Wu Ming. This was also the reason why Wu Ming recovered so quickly after being injured by the explosion of the black mud. Having a high HP was not scary, having a high defense was not scary, but being able to recover HP was scary. After flying for half a day, his HP was restored in less than half a day. If Gidia knew about this, he would definitely vomit blood. And if Wu Ming didn't guess wrong, Gidia didn't seem to have any recovery skills. Therefore, as long as Wu Ming found his main body and fully activated his vitality incarnation, he would be able to catch Gidia off guard and directly attack the root of the problem. Facts proved that the current Wu Ming was not unable to defeat Gidia. Being able to make Gidia summon the black mud to self-destruct was the best proof. Cough cough. In short, the vitality incarnation gave Wu Ming endless vitality. Wu Ming was ready to use the healing potion as a catalyst to transfer vitality to this land. There was no limit to authority and so on. As long as one was still alive, as long as one worked hard to develop one's ability, nothing was impossible. The ancient flying bird was a good example. It went from being controlled to being given. And Wu Ming's vitality incarnation, no one said that it could not be transferred out. Although he had never tried it before, Wu Ming wanted to give it a try today. Then, Wu Ming placed one hand on the edge of the gully and closed his eyes. Then Wu Ming's endless vitality followed Wu Ming's arm to the swollen land, and came in contact with the healing potion that had been integrated into the land. Then Wu Ming's mouth moved. Release life. In an instant, an invisible pressure was released with Wu Ming as the center, and a huge amount of vitality emerged. Chapter 6:12. Countless breaths of life emerged, and the invisible aura spread in all directions. Although it was invisible, it could still affect the surroundings. The aura impacted 16 knights and the others. Run Lily, and the others who were weaker couldn't adapt and couldn't help but retreat. Seeing this, 16 knights and Letitia, who were the strongest, stood in front of everyone and blocked the aura. Retroactive 16 knights' uniform fluttered in the wind. Ignoring her messy blonde hair, Retroactive 16 knights smiled at Wu Ming, the culprit. This is really a big scene. However, Wu Ming couldn't hear this because he found something interesting. Wu Ming found that his vitality avatar could restore the lifeless land of no name. No, it should be said that Wu Ming's vitality avatar alone could do it, and adding the healing potions was just icing on the cake. But that wasn't the main point. It was that Wu Ming had underestimated his authority. Wu Ming found that he could completely restore the land within the area covered by the aura. The 12 avatar authorities that were strengthened by the Great Origin, combined with the power of 2 gods and Wu Ming's own Dragon of Origin, were not weak abilities. Although many of them were not directly related to combat, their powerful effects could not be denied. At this moment, the Vitality Avatar had proven that Wu Ming's authority was not weak. No, it should be said that there were no weak authorities, only weak users. It seems that I have to take a good look at my authority, Wu Ming said to himself. Then Wu Ming looked and found that the area covered by the aura he just released was the entire area of no name. In other words, Wu Ming could completely restore the lifeless land of no name to its perfect state. Let's do it. Wu Ming nodded without hesitation, and put his other hand on the ground. 16 knights and the others instantly felt the ground shaking. What's going on? Is it an earthquake? Black Rabbit was shocked and subconsciously protected the arm of Haruhai Biaichi, who was closest to her. It's not an earthquake, it's Master's ability. Letitia answered Black Rabbit calmly. Although she couldn't fully understand her master's ability, Letitia, who had become Wu Ming's dependent, could still somewhat sense Wu Ming's ability. Just like now, the earth shaking was caused by Wu Ming's ability, and Letitia could sense it. At this time, Haruhai Biaichi, who was especially concerned about the lifeless land, suddenly spoke. Look around you. Everyone looked at the land around them. The cracked ground began to heal, and the nutrient-less sand began to disappear. The soft and weak ground began to harden, and some green grass began to grow on the ground that had no greenery at all. This is. Black Rabbit, Run, and the others were quite shocked. Needless to say, everyone understood. It was obvious that the vitality of this land had been restored by Silent Cry. This is great. Our land is finally rejuvenated. Black Rabbit happily hugged Haruhai Biaichi, who was beside her, and jumped up and down. Even Haruhai Biaichi, who was a hypocrite, was moved by Black Rabbit's excitement, and a slight smile appeared on his face. Run, Lily, and Letitia also had expressions of joy. After all, they had personally seen this land that was originally filled with life become barren, and now they saw this barren land filled with life again. This was the feeling of an old player. 16 Knights and Jiuyuki weren't as excited as Black Rabbit and the others, but the smiles on their faces showed that they were in a good mood. But there was a problem. Villow's land seems to have been restored a bit too much. Jiuyuki, who was carefully observing, saw that even the land near the house in No Name had been restored and slightly frowned. Immediately, 16 Knights jumped into the air, and after a short delay of a few seconds, landed on the ground. I'm afraid that little brother has restored all of No Name's abandoned land. 16 Knights who had good eyesight saw the surrounding scene. This isn't good. Jiuyuki said uneasily. As a young lady of a corporate aristocrat, and as a young lady from her world that had just ended World War II, her country had entered a period of recovery. Jiuyuki clearly understood the methods and rules of post-war recovery. No Name was once the largest community in the East District, and was recognized as the regional ruler by Byakuya, the class ruler. Naturally, No Name had a large piece of land. At the very least, it was an area that others would covet. But because of the Demon King's attack, such a large piece of land had completely lost its life. It had lost its name, flag, and companions. This was why the other communities didn't hit it when it was down, and they didn't even try to steal it. After all, a piece of land without life wasn't that easy to restore. Yes, the other communities wouldn't do something like that. Although there weren't many people in No Name who didn't experience the Demon King's attack, it wasn't that small either. At the very least, it was more than enough to take care of such a large piece of land. And now, not to mention 16 Knights and the others, 95% of No Name's people were children under the age of 10. Even if the children were included, there would only be a mere 130 people. No Name's territory was very large, quite large. At the very least, it was the size of a small town. How could you let a village with 95% of its population being children under the age of 10 manage such a large piece of land? As a genius, 16 Knights Reversal naturally understood this logic. However, 16 Knights wasn't worried about this. Little brother has indeed gone a bit overboard, but I think he should have a way to solve it. 16 Knights held the back of his head with both hands as he looked at Wu Ming, who had finished restoring the land. He stood up and walked over to them. It's done. Wu Ming smiled and waved at everyone. But as the leader, Ren stood up. Mr. Villo, isn't it a bit too much to directly restore all of No Name's land? Ren smiled awkwardly. After all, he had good intentions. Although it wasn't to the point of questioning him, this kind of question made the shy youth feel embarrassed. Don't tell us you didn't think of this, or I'll look down on you. Jiu Yuanfei, who was slightly closer to Wu Ming, said ruthlessly. But Wu Ming didn't disappoint them. How could I not think of this? Of course I have a way. Chapter 6:13. Wu Ming wasn't a careless person, he did it on purpose. But, Mr. Villo, we don't have enough people. Black Rabbit's ears drooped, looking regretful. Looks like we can only rent out the extra land to earn money. Black Rabbit said helplessly. Why was she helpless? Although Black Rabbit wasn't wrong, this was still the main base of No Name. How could they rent out the main base of the community to earn money? After all, the community was comparable to a country, and as a member of the country, they had a collective sense of honor. This was also why Black Rabbit was helpless, because she didn't want outsiders to enter her and her companion's home. But why would Black Rabbit still consider renting out the land even though she was helpless? Although No Name wasn't short on money, the money was still borrowed from Wyrm. Although Wyrm didn't have a deadline, Ren and Black Rabbit had a strong sense of responsibility and believed that they couldn't be too much of a default on Wyrm's debt. Therefore, they were still making money by principle. Plus, it was really a waste of a large piece of land like No Name. It was a special time to deal with it, so they could only endure the humiliation. That's the only way. Ren also nodded helplessly, agreeing with Black Rabbit's opinion. However, this made Wyrm dumbfounded. I say, Black Rabbit, Ren, are you two listening to me properly? Wyrm didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he helplessly flicked Ren and Black Rabbit's heads, causing them to cry out in pain. Didn't I say, I have a way? Before, when Wyrm borrowed money to No Name, now it was the same with the land issue. Why did these two always listen to Wyrm's words? During the borrowing incident, Wyrm had also said that it was a donation of No Name. However, Black Rabbit, Ren, and even the children who were slightly older than Lily insisted on treating the money as a loan. So be it. Wyrm didn't want to take it back anyway, so he gave her an indefinite period of time. However, Black Rabbit and Ren had the idea that they had to return the money as soon as possible. They started their money-making plan. Although it wasn't as tiring as before, it still wasn't easy. This time was the same. Wyrm said that he had a way, but these two guys ignored him. This made Wyrm not know whether to laugh or cry. How can we allow outsiders to use our No Name base's land? You have to follow your heart, Black Rabbit. Don't forget your original intention. This sentence was not a joke. Black Rabbit's original intention of inviting Wyrm was to protect her family's home. It could not change because of this. But, Mr. Villo, we really don't have enough manpower. Black Rabbit rubbed his aching forehead with an innocent expression. What a little idiot. Wyrm smiled helplessly, then gave Black Rabbit's head another smack. Wah dash, because he hit the same place. Black Rabbit was about to cry again. However, the stick had been given, now it was time to give the carrot. You already have a backer like me. What are you afraid of? Wyrm stroked Black Rabbit's head and smiled. After all, he was a powerhouse that White Yiksha personally admitted was not inferior to her. It could be said that with such a powerhouse joining No Name, it was only a matter of time before it rose. Then Villo, do you have any ideas? Haruhito Hikari pulled Wyrm's sleeve and asked curiously. Of course, the idea is to increase the number of people. Wyrm kept them in suspense and smiled. Then, Wyrm reached out with one hand. In an instant, a golden ripple swallowed Wyrm's arm. It looked like Wyrm was looking for something. I've been curious for a long time. Villo, what is this golden ripple? Black Rabbit asked with interest and puzzlement. One of my abilities. It's just ordinary personal space. Although I have the gift card, this old friend has been with me for a long time. It's still more convenient this way. After Wyrm finished speaking, he seemed to have found what he was looking for, and pulled his hand out of the golden ripple. A palm-sized stone figurine appeared in Wyrm's hand. It looked like a stone giant, but this stone giant was slightly smaller. Stone figurine? Black Rabbit looked curiously at the palm-sized stone figurine in Wyrm's hand, and poked it twice. This is not an ordinary stone figurine. Wyrm shook his head and moved his arm away from Black Rabbit, who was poking the figurine. This made Black Rabbit puff out his cheeks in dissatisfaction. Did you know that there is a rare stone figurine item that can summon endless demons? Wyrm stopped playing with Black Rabbit and asked everyone. Wyrm had such an item. It was one of the many powerful items that Demiurgos gave Wyrm when Wyrm left Nazalic. A rare gift that can summon endless demons? Everyone who had never heard of such a gift muttered. If that item is used, unless the item is destroyed, the summoned demons will fill up the entire world. Endlessly summoning demons was no joke. It was a real thing. It was a game item. When game items were transformed into reality, some of their abilities were often quite terrifying. Resurrection alone was already very powerful. No matter which world it was, resurrecting life was quite difficult. Only existences like Nazalik had the ability to resurrect without any sequelae. Or it could be said that the other world also had such an ability. Wuming learned from Sebastian that Rostsong's captain had the ability to resurrect. However, it seemed that the physical fitness had to meet the standard, and they had to lie in bed for a month. Even so, the native of that world had the ability to resurrect, which was enough to open Wuming's eyes. After Wuming finished speaking, Jiufei Niao looked at the stone figurine in Wuming's hand seriously. Could it be that the one in your hand is that rare gift? Jiufei Niao asked calmly. Of course not. Wuming shook his head. This made Black Rabbit, Run, and the others who were slightly worried feel relieved. Although I also have that item. Then why did you say it as if you have never seen it before? Black Rabbit roared at Wuming. Ignoring Black Rabbit's roar, Wuming raised the stone figurine in his hand, or rather, it could be called the magic puppet Graham figurine. It seems that magic puppets are stone figurines. This is a tool that can summon an endless number of magic puppets. Chapter 6:14. Endless Magic Marionettes. Everyone repeated Wuming's words. You mean to let the magic marionettes work on No Name's land? 16 knights crossed his arms in front of his chest. As one of the more intelligent members of No Name, 16 knights easily guessed Wuming's thoughts based on the series of words he had said before. After all, there are a lot of magic marionettes, and they don't need to eat or rest. They are the perfect labor force. As he said this, Wuming looked at the magic marionette in his hand. This tool could summon endless magic marionettes of various types. Although there were no management-type magic marionettes, as long as the tool was controlled properly and recognized as the master of No Name, then even the youngest child of No Name would be able to command the magic marionettes. Moreover, this is a tool that can summon endless magic marionettes. We can also make money by selling magic marionettes. Wuming's words made Renha Black Rabbit's eyes light up, and his expression became more cheerful. Lily also cried out happily. That's great. This way our community won't have to worry about financial resources. Although Lily looked like a little lowly, in the No Name where the average age was less than 10 years old, Lily had a lot of responsibilities. Not only did she have to prepare 3 meals a day for Wuming and the others, but she also had to lead the capable children to prepare 3 meals a day for the 120 children. Not only that, but Lily was also in charge of all kinds of daily necessities and all kinds of housework for No Name. Although the No Name's house was damaged a lot, but in these 3 years a part of it was repaired, but this part was already big enough. Otherwise, why would there be an underground bathing area, and Wuming and the others could choose a room at will? And that was because the house was big. All in all, Lily took on a heavy responsibility that shouldn't be taken on at her age. Wuming's mind was thinking, and a light flashed in his eyes. Time to do something. Wuming's reaction was self-reflection, but Renha Black Rabbit's reaction was different from Wuming's. Both of their expressions became gloomy. Mr. Villo, I'm really sorry for troubling you, Run said rather embarrassedly. Immediately after, Black Rabbit also spoke in embarrassment. Young Master Run is right. Mr. Villo obviously didn't care about the decline of No Name, and joined our community. You even put in so much effort to contribute to No Name. We really don't know how to thank you. The first thing they thought of was not their own community, but their companions' members, who had sacrificed themselves for this family community. After all, the reason why they risked their lives to protect the community was for their companions and their family. Meanwhile, this family member in front of them had made a sacrifice that would be highly appreciated by any other community for the sake of the community. Meanwhile, their community didn't have the ability to repay this family member, and could only ask for more. This made the Renha Black Rabbit very upset, especially the Black Rabbit who was full of dedication as a member of the Yueta clan. However, in the face of their guilt, Wuming could not help but laugh. What are you guys talking about? In an instant, Wuming had a matter-of-fact look on his face. Do I need a reward for my family? Isn't this a matter of course? Run, Black Rabbit, and even Lily beside them and Letitia behind Wuming were all stunned. That's right. For the sake of the family, family members and companions were all selfless contributions. It wasn't about how long a family member contributed, nor was it about how little other family members contributed. However, because of Wuming's strength, Run and the others subconsciously treated Wuming as a guest of honor. This caused them to feel guilty. I actually don't have much ambition. Even if I've experienced a lot of adventures in other worlds and defeated a lot of powerhouses, I don't think many people know me. Wuming recalled with a smile. Whether it was the world of Type Moon or other worlds, Wuming could be said to be not very famous. In the alternate world of Nazalic, Wuming was at most a kind and powerful recluse who had subordinates who were not weaker than him. At most, his reputation was only promoted by the Golden Princess in Rystage. The commoners only knew that there was a powerhouse. Furthermore, Wuming strictly forbade Nazalic from breaking ties with the outside world. Other than Sebastian, the upper echelons of the Rystage kingdom, and some special people, Wuming was only famous in Nazalic. In the world of the Godslayers, ordinary people did not know about the Godslayers at all. Even if Wuming was the last king, he was only famous in the magic circle. However, being famous was one thing. Those who knew Wuming and had seen Wuming were few. In the alternate world where they competed for the Star Cup, other than Rick's group of humans, only Shiobi and the Skywings knew him. Although other races also knew of Wuming's existence, Wuming did not know whether they had seen Wuming or not. Not only that, but other than Rick, the humans also treated him as an ordinary refugee. However, looking at Wuming's history, he was actually quite famous in a sense. In the world of the Type Moon, the powerhouses were all existences of the Root Dragon. And other worlds also had people who knew of Wuming's fame although they had not seen him before. It was just that Wuming had never thought of being famous. Wuming's original thoughts were only to become stronger and return home. Now he had returned home, and his strength had changed. His current goal was to get rid of Gidia, the hidden danger. However, that was the big goal, and Wuming's current small goal was to develop No Name first. I'm a part of this family. Wuming smiled in return. Mr. Villo, Black Rabbit, and the others did not know what to say. In short, they were touched. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Wuming began his performance. Also, the money I donated to No Name before, I never thought of asking you to return it. Wuming looked at Run and Black Rabbit with a look of negotiation. Why don't we just forget about it? Wuming said with a smile. However, Black Rabbit was the first to disagree. How can we do that, Mr. Villo? We already said that we would borrow it. How can we go back on our words? They always felt that Black Rabbit was the one who borrowed the money, and Wuming was the one who borrowed the money. That's right, Mr. Villo, we must return this money. Ren also had a determined expression. Yes, do as you please. Wuming replied with a bitter smile. Sure enough, the one who owed money was the boss, and they had to listen to the boss. Seeing that Wuming's debt dispute had ended, the three problem children began to become active. Then Black Rabbit. Let's talk about our direct problem. 16 Knights of Reverse smiled at Black Rabbit with a terrifying smile. What? Black Rabbit was confused. She did not know how she offended this group of people. Of course it's because you kept talking about Villo and neglected our matter, Black Rabbit. Juyu and Fei Niao pointed out the problem. After all, the three of them continuously participated in the gift competition, which was also a great help to No Name. Not mentioning us made me unhappy. That's why Black Rabbit needs to be punished. Haruai Toshi said lightly. The Black Rabbit looked at the three problem children in shock, and let out a cry of surprise. No. Chapter 6:15. Ren panicked and wanted to stop them, but he couldn't do anything as he watched the three problem children bully the Black Rabbit. Wuming, Letitia, and Lily went to the houses of No Name. Wuming's intention was to renovate No Name's house as well. After all, it was a bit awkward to have a bunch of broken houses on such a large piece of land. Therefore, with Ren's approval, Wuming followed Lily to the houses. Master, do you know how to repair houses? Letitia asked respectfully, but it sounded like she was doubtful. Master, These houses don't have any life force, and many of them have already collapsed. It will be difficult to repair them. Hearing Letitia's words, Wuming looked at some of the collapsed houses on the outskirts of No Name's territory. No Name was once the largest community in the East District. Therefore, this piece of land that was once the largest community in the East District was naturally huge. It was impossible to only build a few houses in the center. There must be some houses in the entire territory. But because of the Demon King's attack, as well as the desolation of the land, it was already very difficult for the people of No Name to repair the houses in the center. Therefore, in these 3 years, the houses in No Name's territory were basically not repaired by the people of No Name. Therefore, these houses had already collapsed. Not only that, many of the houses in the center of No Name's territory had also collapsed. As the largest community in the East District, the house in the center was actually quite big. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a castle. Well, as a box world with many gods and Buddhas, basically every community that was slightly stronger had this kind of Western castle-style residence. The castle was connected to the outside with a huge reservoir. At this moment, the reservoir was filled with incomparably clean water. It was the water provided by defeating the water god and obtaining the water tree sapling. In the beginning, when the black rabbit placed the water tree sapling on the small platform in the middle of the reservoir, the water that instantly covered the entire reservoir made the birds from the past excited for a while. The clean reservoir complemented the land that was full of life, but it was surrounded by castle-like houses that looked like they had been abandoned for a long time. This was an existence that was rather inconsistent with the land and the pool. Therefore, Wuming decided to first repair the houses here, and then take care of the other houses. Letitia, I really don't have the ability to repair houses. Looking at these castle-like houses that looked like dilapidated houses, Silent Wonder spoke to Letitia without looking back. Lily, who was listening on the side, was stunned. So embarrassing. Why did you come back if you don't have the ability to repair houses? But Letitia was waiting for Wuming to continue. But we have this. Wuming raised his arm, and the small golem statue appeared once again. Without saying anything, Wuming directly infused magic power into the stone statue. The moment the statue's eyes to Letitia, the statues to be activated. Then, a dark purple ripple appeared beside Wuming. It was a skill that Wuming often used, portal. However, this wasn't a portal. It was a passage that Wuming created to spawn magic puppets. You see, isn't Yggdrasil a game? Basically, all the ripples in this game are in the form of portals. They are all purplish-black ripples. Although it was a bit of a shoddy job, at least it was useful. It could spawn monsters. Suddenly, a stone pillar came out of the dark purple portal. Taking a closer look, it wasn't a stone pillar. It was clearly the leg of a magic puppet. Then, a 5-meter-tall stone giant with red eyes and a body made of hard white stone walked out and stood beside Wuming. Then, Silent Cry stopped channeling mana into the golem statue in his hand, and the purple-black ripples disappeared. Of course, it wasn't that Wuming didn't want to work anymore. He just wanted to see if this magic puppet could meet his requirements. Go repair the damaged house. Wuming ordered the magic puppet. Originally, monsters that were summoned by a tool that could summon unlimited monsters wouldn't listen to the summoner's orders. However, magic puppets were different. In the game Yggdrasil, they wouldn't move unless there was a master or a leader who gave the order. Normally, the magic puppet would be in a standby state. Only when a high-level magic creature or its master gave it an order would the magic puppet begin to move according to the order given. Therefore, Yggdrasil originally didn't have a tool that could summon magic puppets like this. However, after Wuming found out that there was a tool that could summon unlimited demons, Wuming created a tool that could summon magic puppets based on that tool. Well, actually, it was because Wuming was tired of making magic puppets one by one during the battle against Darius. Even with the help of Ain's Ergong, Wuming didn't have to make magic puppets one by one. That was a very troublesome thing for Wuming. Therefore, Wuming used his own grand creation item to create a modified version of the magic puppet unlimited summoning tool based on the tool that could summon unlimited demons. By controlling the amount of magic power released, One could control the number of magic puppets that could be produced. One could also choose the type of magic puppet that could be produced. Another thing was that it could be turned off or turned on at any time. The tool that could summon unlimited demons couldn't be turned off once it was started. Therefore, it was a very rare tool. Wuming's tool was even more cheat-like. It could be turned on or off at any time. In addition to being able to control the amount and speed of production, and choose the type of magic puppet that could be produced, this tool was comparable to a god-tier tool. If it wasn't for the fact that the magic puppets produced weren't very strong, they would be close to a world-class tool. All in all, the monsters produced by this tool could be controlled. Otherwise, Wuming wouldn't be at ease to give it to children. After hearing Wuming's words, the magic puppet immediately walked towards the house in front of it. Because of its weight, every step the magic puppet took shook the ground. If it wasn't for Wuming giving life to the ground and making the ground solid, the magic puppet would have probably sunk into the sand and left a footprint on the ground. In short, the magic puppet began its performance. Chapter 6:16. Oh, so this is the magic puppet you summoned with your item. It looks quite sturdy. I wonder if it can take a punch from me. I'm getting excited. 16 Knights, who was attracted by the magic puppet, walked to Wuming with her arms crossed. Please don't attack it. If you punch it, it will probably be reduced to rubble. Wuming looked at 16 Knights helplessly. At this time, Ku Asuka's voice came from the other side of Wuming. Ku Asuka patted Wuming's arm with excitement and curiosity. The stone giant in the fairy tale. I didn't expect to see one in the Hakata world. This is the first time I've seen one. As expected, a common monster like the stone giant would be the most familiar monster in the eyes of ordinary people. Yes, then can you stop hitting me? Wuming resisted powerlessly. Although he wouldn't get hurt, it didn't feel good. I didn't expect you to be so chaste. 16 Knights also looked at Ku Asuka with a mocking expression. How would a villain like you understand my interest? Ku Asuka didn't back down and replied to 16 Knights, but her eyes were still on the magic puppet. From Wuming's point of view, Ku Asuka didn't look like someone who was interested in fairy tales. She looked more like someone who was interested in strange creatures. This probably had something to do with Ku Asuka's era. After World War II, there probably wasn't much entertainment. This was especially true for Jiu Yuanfei, who was the young mistress of the family. She must have been extremely busy back then. Wuming guessed. However, Wuming's guess was the opposite of the truth. Ku Asuka, who had the ability to control, wasn't bothered by her responsibilities as a young lady. How is it going to repair the damaged house? Haruihibu asked. Since 16 Knights and Ku Asuka had lost interest in the Black Rabbit, then Haruihibu, who was a problem child, naturally followed along. Wuming looked at the Black Rabbit that was being supported by Run with pity. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. Then Wuming answered Haruihibu's question. It naturally has its own unique method. I guarantee that it will be unexpected and reasonable. Wuming crossed his arms and waited for the magic puppet's performance. The magic puppet walked up to No Name, which was a huge building that looked like a castle, and slowly stopped in front of it. Because the other members of No Name had taken care of it for the past 3 years, the castle-like building only had some minor damage and color faded. However, the magic puppet didn't care how it was damaged or how badly it was damaged. It only knew that it needed to fix this place. Then the magic puppet itself disintegrated. That's right, the stone golem had disintegrated into a pile of rubble. These rubble combined with the rubble of the collapsed walls. And under the influence of its own mana, the rubble wrapped around the castle-shaped building. In an instant, the 5-meter-tall stone giant, at the cost of losing its own body, repaired the building that looked damaged. Even the outer walls of the castle were rearranged by the stone giant's stone pieces. The missing parts were repaired, and the old parts were disintegrated by the magic puppet into fine dust. The entire outer wall was repaired by the magic puppet, and it looked like a newly built building. This is really not simple. This stone giant's limbs are developed, but its brain is quite good. Black Rabbit, who was being supported by Wuming, commented on the magic puppet summoned by Wuming. Seeing that she had just been played by the 3 problem children, Wuming didn't want to complain about the black rabbit anymore. In fact, it was because Wuming had given the magic puppet a command in advance. If there was a hole, it would be repaired. If there was a hole, it would be repaired. If there was a hole, it would be repaired. If there was a hole, it would be repaired. In short, as long as there was an imperfect place, the magic puppet would find it and repair it. But this way the efficiency has increased by a lot. Ren nodded as he looked at the magic puppet's repaired wall. There wasn't the slightest gap in the wall. It looked like a natural whole piece. Every piece of broken stone was tightly entwined with the building due to the influence of mana. It didn't look like it was made up of large pieces of broken stone. But if we use these magic puppets to repair all the buildings, won't it cause the building to collapse later? Haruai Hibu asked. Don't worry, the magic puppet's magic power will change the gaps between itself and the building it is attached to. It can fuse the two together. After a while, when the magic puppet's magic power is exhausted, it will fuse into the same material. Wuming's words made everyone feel relieved. Then let's continue, everyone. Wuming wasn't talking about the no-name people, but the magic puppets. Wuming began to inject magic power into the magic puppet in his hand again. This time, the amount of magic power injected was quite large. In an instant, a black and purple ripple appeared, and several 5-meter-tall figures walked out from it. It was the mass-produced version of the stone giant from the very beginning. When these stone giants came out, they each ran to the no-name houses. After the first batch of magic puppets left the ripple space, the second batch of magic puppets walked out with their hard legs, shaking the earth. In this way, Wuming continued to inject magic power into the magic puppet in his hand, and the same stone giant magic puppets came out from the black and purple ripple space. Looking at the no-name territory that seemed to have become a breeding ground for stone giants, everyone didn't know what to say. Actually, when the second batch of stone giants came out, everyone was already surprised. Well, if it was back to 16 nights, Wuming couldn't see whether he was surprised or not, but everyone was surprised. This was because Wuming's magic puppet summoned too many stone giants, and it didn't seem to stop. These stone giants were at most 6 digits, and 5 digits was impossible. However, if there was a community with countless 6-digit stone giants, then that community would be at the top of the 6-digit stone giants. Maybe even a 5-digit stone giant could try to level up. When Wuming said that he had a magic puppet that could summon an unlimited number of monsters, everyone was surprised, but they had never seen such a scene, so their surprise wasn't that high. However, after seeing such a scene, it was really shocking. There was no other way. These countless stone giants were really too spectacular. Ren thought for a moment, and began to mobilize. Since it's like this, then everyone, let's do a big cleaning of the no-name today. Oh, of course, it was Black Rabbit who shouted this. It was still very awkward in the situation where everyone was silent. However, this time it was a little better. Not only was Black Rabbit shouting, Lily was also embarrassed with her. Chapter 6:17. In the evening the sun had set. The entire no-name had entered a world of darkness. Wuming and the others stood in front of the brand new no-name base, full of joy and gratification as they looked at the renovated castle that looked brand new. This is great, our community finally has some semblance of what it used to be. Black Rabbit bounced around the group happily, just like a rabbit. That was indeed the case. No-name was built 3 years ago. Although it wasn't very luxurious, it still had a grand atmosphere, unlike now where the land was abandoned and the buildings were damaged. Therefore, after Wuming used the magic puppets to roughly repair the no-name buildings, a brand new and more simple building complex appeared in front of everyone. This made the original no-name members quite moved. There was nothing more exciting than falling from a high place to a low place, and then climbing back up. Not to mention Black Rabbit, Letitia and the other old members of no-name. Even the new members like 16 Knights had a satisfied look on their faces. However, at the beginning, they had a shameless look on their faces as they refused to do it. What was going on? The situation was like this. When Ren proposed a thorough cleaning, everyone readily agreed, except for the 3 problem children, who were unwilling. Boring not doing it. I'm a lady. If the 2 of them don't want to do it, then I don't want to do it either. Then, when Wuming suggested that they could command the small magic puppets to clean, the 3 problem children's eyes lit up. Then, he led the special-shaped magic puppet that Wuming had summoned with an item, and left to clean up the mess. They were very interested in magic puppets, so how could they let go of such an opportunity to command magic puppets? As for the special magic puppets, they were basically the size of a person, large enough to walk into a house. There were no such magic puppets in Yggdrasil, but they couldn't resist Wuming's methods. Even the tools were modified by Wuming himself, so adding some special magic puppets was no problem at all. After all, magic puppets could be casually made. The essence of a magic puppet was a pile of rocks. Fire magic puppets, steel magic puppets, and the like were just a pile of rocks with a ball of flame or a large amount of iron added to it. Just like that, Wuming, Letitia, and Lily repaired the buildings on the outside, while Run, Black Rabbit, and the 3 problem children cleaned up the inside. With almost unlimited magic puppets, whether it was repairing the buildings on the outside or cleaning on the inside, with these magic puppets and other people's commands, the efficiency could be said to be quite fast. If that wasn't the case, they wouldn't have been able to clean up all the buildings in No Name's territory in less than a day. By the way, while a large number of magic puppets were working, they also attracted the attention of more than 100 children from No Name. When the children asked for the reason, Wuming directly pushed the credit to Run, making Run, as the leader of the community, rise in the children's hearts. This made Run somewhat helpless, but after all, Wuming had already said it, and even threw the tools that were always activated into Ren's hands. In the end, Ren had no choice but to admit it on the spot. Wuming nodded his head in satisfaction as he stood in front of the majestic, No Name, white building complex that was filled with an ancient aura. Although the color is a bit monotonous, at least the quality is not bad. How could the quality be bad when using bricks worth 6 digits to build a house? It was already very extravagant, okay? After all, Villo, you only summoned white magic puppets. How could the color not be monotonous? As a sensitive beauty, Jiao Fei Niao was very dissatisfied with the pure white bricks provided by Wuming. After all, rendering multiple colors was the most suitable color for a beautiful girl. That's too troublesome. It's more efficient to only produce the same type of magic puppet. Wuming shrugged his shoulders. Just like Gorgon, who had Tiamat's 100 beast power, she only produced the same type of magic beast at the beginning, but after a long time, she began to produce other types of magic beast. Because of the high efficiency, Wuming was the same. Copying and pasting the same magic puppet would definitely be more efficient than creating a different type. Although this was a tool that could summon unlimited magic puppets, after all, this was a tool that Wuming had modified himself, and Wuming's setting was that the user could choose the type of magic puppet. All in all, the final result was very good. Alright, we've been busy for a day, and the results are not bad. Everyone go rest. At this time, Rin came out to show his effectiveness as a leader. That's true, this is the result of everyone's hard work. If we don't go in and try, we'll be wasting our efforts. Black Rabbit playfully closed one of her eyes and said to everyone. After all, what she said made sense, and it was already late, so everyone entered the finished building. As soon as they entered, they saw some magic puppets standing like guards in the No Name Hall. These were the magic puppets that Wuming had specially created to clean the interior of the problem children. When all the buildings were repaired, Wuming had also taught Ren to stop summoning magic puppets. And because these magic puppets didn't need to sacrifice their own bodies to repair the buildings, they were only used as coolies for cleaning, so these magic puppets didn't disappear. And now, they were standing like guards in the building, so it was probably the work of the 3 problem children. Everyone looked at 16 Knights and the other 2. 16 Knights and the other 2 didn't panic at all. Isn't this great, magic puppet guards? 16 Knights waved his hand. It's not a good habit to waste things. Jiao Yuao crossed her arms and said seriously, after all, they couldn't just let these magic puppets stand outside or waste them. This looks pretty good. Haruhi Hiroyuki didn't feel that he did anything wrong, so he had an innocent expression. Being guards isn't bad, after all. These magic puppets have 6-digit strength, so they're still useful for the current no-name. After all, having a group of 6-digit guards was quite beneficial for the no-name, which was 95% children. Just like when guards sent people to capture the no-name children, if Wuming, 16 knights, and the others weren't there, there was a high chance that they would have succeeded. Although Black Rabbit wasn't weak, she wasn't good at playing dirty. If she couldn't find those people, Black Rabbit couldn't do anything, right? Then everyone go to sleep, Ren said with concern. However, the 3 problem children and Wuming didn't move. Master? Letitia asked doubtfully. Following Wuming's gaze, Ren, Letitia, and the others looked at the table. There was a letter on it, and the symbol was a Valkyrie looking at each other. That was the symbol of this and yes. However, Ren, Black Rabbit, and the others had the same thought. It's over. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.